My parents kicked me out because of my sister. 6 years later, they're asking for help to support her and her 4 young children. I, 32F, am currently in charge of significant commercial development projects around New England as a successful architect at a prominent Boston firm. Nathan, a 34-year-old man who works as a project manager in sustainable development, is my fiancé. Our wedding is scheduled for the following year. On the surface, my life appears to be ideal. I have rewarding work, a wonderful relationship, and a lovely craftsman-style home that I designed extensive modifications for. However, I'm questioning everything because of a complex family situation that recently reached a breaking point. I must go into great depth about my family history in order for you to comprehend the current circumstance. I was raised in a Connecticut suburb in an upper-middle-class household. My mother, Phoebe, 56F, taught high school at a private school until she left 6 years ago, and my father, Richard, 58M, works as a corporate lawyer at a reputable business. Ashley, my younger sister, who is 30 degrees Fahrenheit, has always been the star of our family. Favoritism was evident from my earliest recollections, even if my parents would strongly dispute it if questioned. I received consecutive A's on my report card when I was 8 and Ashley was 6, and I was simply informed, "That's expected of you?" While Ashley received B's and was commended and brought out for ice cream because she was trying her best. Throughout our childhood, this trend persisted. Ashley's meager efforts were widely praised, while my accomplishments were anticipated and frequently disregarded. When I was 15, I recall one specific occurrence. I had been working on my design project for months, frequently staying up until 2 in the morning, in preparation for a national high school architectural competition. I received a minor scholarship as a result of placing second nationally. Ashley had an ordinary soccer match that day, so my parents didn't even make it to the award ceremony. "That's nice," they replied, barely taking their eyes off the TV as I brought my award home, before turning back to Ashley's dramatic account of how she nearly scored a goal. Even though my parents were clearly biased, I did well in school and in my personal life. I led multiple community service projects, kept a 4.0 GPA, and served as president of the student body. In the meantime, as Ashley approached adolescence, her actions became more alarming. When she began to slip out when I was 14, my parents told me to keep a better eye on her. She was caught stealing high-end makeup when she was 15, and they accused me of not providing her my allowance money even though she clearly needed it. The assumption that I should put Ashley's needs and interests ahead of my own was the most annoying aspect, not only the partiality. My part-time job at a local design firm, where I made coffee and filed papers, allowed me to save up $3,000 when I was 16. I intended to use it for a Columbia University summer architecture course. My parents, however, borrowed my cash to assist cover the repairs after Ashley, who wasn't supposed to be driving, smashed her boyfriend's car. They never fulfilled their commitment to reimburse me. I lost the chance to improve my college applications and the summer program opportunity. I was able to gain admission to a prominent architectural program in spite of these obstacles. In order to save money, my parents agreed to let me live at home while I was in college and to assist with my tuition. They wanted me around to assist handle Ashley, who was now in high school and becoming more disobedient by the day, so this wasn't totally selfless. I recall making several attempts to speak with Ashley about her actions. One exchange is particularly memorable. 3 months or so passed before everything collapsed. At 3 in the morning on a school night, I discovered her slinking back into the house. Assisting Ashley to climb through the window, I whispered, "Ashley, you need to be more careful. You're in your senior year, and colleges look at more than just grades." She retorted, "Stop trying to be mom. Just because your life is boring and all about buildings doesn't mean mine has to be." In hindsight, I ought to have anticipated this. Ashley spent a lot of time with Tyler, her 17-year-old ex-boyfriend, who was known for being trouble. My parents viewed everyone I dated with extreme mistrust, yet they were surprisingly lenient about their relationship. My mother accused me of being envious of Ashley's vibrant social life when I attempted to voice my concerns about Tyler. 6 years ago, everything drastically altered. One day, Ashley, a senior in high school at the time, came home and declared she was expecting a child. The father was Tyler. I can still clearly recall that night. Ashley sitting on the couch with a look of fear and defiance on her face, my father pacing the living room, and my mother sobbing uncontrollably. In the confusion that ensued, my parents somehow twisted the facts to accuse me of failing to keep a closer eye on her. My mother arrived in my room the following day with news that would forever alter my course in life. Without even looking at him, she stated, "You have to move out by the end of the week." I couldn't understand. What? Why? With Tyler moving in and a baby on the way, the house isn't large enough for all of us. Ashley needs your space. One approach to support your sister at this trying period would be to move out. I made an effort to reason with her. During my third year of college, I worked part-time at a nearby architecture business and maintained a 3.9 GPA. She insisted on finding me a cheap apartment close to university, even though I just requested for a few months. The worst thing was when my father summoned me to his home office the next day. He delivered another hit while seated behind his enormous oak desk, which he had always used to frighten clients. "We won't be able to continue paying your tuition," he stated in a cold, clinical tone. "That money is necessary for Ashley and the child. You'll figure something out since you're intelligent." I stood there looking at the man who had always emphasized the value of education and accountability, suddenly severing his daughter's ties after she had done everything correctly. The irony hurt. I packed my things that evening. My father stopped me in the driveway as I was packing the final box into my car. I briefly believed that he might reconsider. Rather, he gave me a piece of paper with a list of local women's shelters on it. He said, "Just in case," and went back inside. The next phase of my life was the darkest. For 4 months, I lived in my car and, for safety, parked every night in a different Walmart lot. In the architecture firm where I worked part-time, I would change in public toilets, take a shower in the campus gym, and keep my business attire in my locker. I took a second job working as a late-night barista, frequently juggling multiple jobs while attending classes. I asked a few family members for assistance, but they all turned me down. My 53-year-old Aunt Susan, who had always expressed her pride in my accomplishments, informed me that she didn't want to become embroiled in family strife. According to my grandparents, they were too old to handle the matter. I occasionally went days without eating a decent meal, barely making it on protein bars and coffee. I frequently slept off at my desk while working on my homework in the college library, which was open 24 hours a day. I kept my GPA the same in spite of everything. My escape was architecture. I put all of my suffering and willpower into my designs. My parents never once called to see whether I was still alive during this time. Ashley didn't either. After learning that she had given birth to a boy, I made one phone call, but it was awkward and short. After that, there was no communication for 6 years. I had to start over in my life throughout those 6 years. Despite working 60-hour weeks and living in my car and then a small room in a dubious area of town, I finished with honors. A famous Boston business was interested in my final thesis project, which was a design for a sustainable community center with transitional housing that received multiple prizes. Living in a small studio apartment and trying to save as much money as I could, I began my career as an entry-level architect. Every advancement was a triumph over my past. I was managing my own projects for 4 years. My area of expertise was sustainable commercial development, and I gained recognition for my creative ideas that put the needs of people and the environment first. 3 years ago, Nathan and I met at a seminar on sustainable development. During the Q&A portion of his presentation on green construction projects, I disputed one of his claims. He invited me to continue the conversation over coffee rather than becoming defensive. Dinner evolved from that coffee into the most wholesome and encouraging relationship I've ever experienced. Nathan is well aware of my background. He was present when I purchased my first home after getting expelled. When I signed the paperwork and broke down because I was so overcome by the fact that I finally had a place where no one could make me leave, he held me. He supported my idea to refurbish it and make it an environment that reflected all of my accomplishments over the years. Through mutual contacts, I occasionally learned tidbits about Ashley's life. Shortly after the birth of their baby, she wed Tyler, but the two of them split up after 6 months. By that time, she was expecting her second kid, but the father had entirely vanished after learning of the pregnancy. She had another kid with Marcus, the man she married 2 years later, but their marriage failed when she had an affair. She is now pregnant once more and doesn't seem to know who the father is. I got a call yesterday from an unidentified number right before bed. After 6 years of stillness, my mother called. She initially pretended nothing had happened, inquiring about my life and showing interest in my accomplishments. I briefly felt like that young child again, excited to tell my mother about my achievements. I even began to tell her about my recent promotion to senior architect and my engagement. Then she revealed the true reason she had called. In order to assist Ashley and her kids, my parents want me to return to Connecticut. They say they're too old to care for 4 small children, and my father will shortly be retiring. They even had the gall to claim that, as the successful sister, it is my duty to support the family. My mother said, "You've always been the responsible one," with that cunning tone I so vividly remembered in her voice. Now more than ever, Ashley needs her big sister. Family must remain united. A chilly chuckle erupted within me. Family have to stick together? I said it again. When I was sleeping in my car, Where was this family? When I was barely eating and working 2 jobs? When there was nobody for me to turn to? I went on despite my mother's attempt to stop me. You absolutely abandoned me, kicked me out, and stopped paying for my schooling in order to help Ashley. You expect me to sacrifice my life, career, and relationship in order to clean up your mess once more now that she has continued to make bad decisions and you're sick of dealing with the fallout. I hung up after telling her that I would never again risk my life for Ashley. Since then, family members who turned down my request for assistance 6 years ago have been bombarding my phone with messages accusing me of being callous and asserting that family helps family. Nathan completely agrees with my decision to uphold my boundaries, but other people argue that since they are still family and retaliation won't mend old hurts, I should at least have a meeting with them. But this doesn't seem like vindictiveness to me. I saw it as defending the life I created on my own, after being deserted by those who were meant to keep me safe. Update 1. First of all, I want to thank everyone for their tremendous support and wisdom. My phone has been buzzing nonstop with messages from extended family members for the past 48 hours, which has been very taxing. The circumstances have changed in unexpected ways. My mother wrote me a long email detailing Ashley's children's daily problems, along with comprehensive pictures of my nieces and nephews. The oldest, who is currently in kindergarten, is exhibiting early behavioral problems. The second child's health issues necessitate regular medical care. Another is on the way, while the third is still a toddler. A communication from an old family friend who teaches at Ashley's old high school was what really got to me. She informed me that in order to pay for Ashley's costs and medical bills, my parents have been taking out loans. My father has delayed his retirement indefinitely, and they have already remortgaged their home. Ashley personally sent a direct message, which was the most unexpected development. She reached out for the first time in 6 years, not to apologize but to let her big sister know that she had changed and needed her. She talked about acknowledging her past sins and is attending therapy. Although I've seen this pattern before, I still have a part of me that wants to believe her. In order to keep both physical and emotional distance from the family, my fiancé Nathan proposed a compromise, providing financial support for the kids' schooling through a trust fund. It's an intriguing idea that would enable me to assist the defenseless kids without being embroiled in the family strife. All of this is still registering in my mind. Seeing those pictures of the children, who are innocent in all of this, has made me feel conflicted, even though my logical side knows I owe them nothing. When I make a choice about Nathan's suggestion, I'll provide another update. I need some time right now to process everything without having to deal with family pressure all the time. Update 2. Over the last 24 hours, everything has drastically changed. My mother called me in an emergency last night. Ashley had been involved in a severe vehicle accident. Another automobile ran a red light and collided with her car while she was driving alone. The situation was dire because she was pregnant. I got into my car and drove to Connecticut for 4 hours without giving it any thought. It felt unreal to enter that hospital. As he paced the corridor in his faded suit, my father appeared to be much older than his years. When she saw me, my mother lost it all. I hadn't actually seen them in person for 6 years. Although Ashley's injuries were not life-threatening because of the airbags, the doctors added, they had to perform an emergency C-section in order to save the baby. With a questionable prognosis, the premature baby is currently in the NICU. My biggest surprise was going back to the house I grew up in. I grudgingly complied with my parents' request that I remain rather than book a hotel. Entering my former room felt like entering a time portal. My old desk was still in its original condition, my architecture designs were still attached to the walls, and even my high school trophies were still neatly arranged. Everything was just as I had left it 6 years prior. Then it dawned on me that they hadn't actually converted my room into an area for Ashley. The whole needing the room pretext had been nothing more than a pretext. Another unanticipated emotional moment was meeting my nieces and nephews. I was astonished to hear Charlie, 6 million, the oldest, say, "Aunt Rebecca, I know you from the pictures." My parents had apparently informed them about their aunt, who constructs stunning structures, in spite of everything. After I assisted them in building a block tower, the smaller ones, Ava, 4F, and Lucas, 2M, who had been timid at first, quickly warmed up. After 3 days here, I'm learning new things that make my emotions even more complicated. I discovered a stack of unsent letters from my father while searching through some old documents for Ashley's insurance information. They were letters of apologies that he never mailed, all addressed to me and dated throughout the previous 6 years. Tears appeared to have soiled several of them. Yesterday, Nathan flew in to help me get through this. I became aware of how much these children deserve to be free from the chaos they were born into as I watched him engage with my nieces and nephew, using play to teach them basic engineering concepts. Ashley is still in and out of consciousness, but she is stable presently. The baby's condition is still dire. Although I've taken an emergency leave of absence, I have some important project deadlines to attend to in Boston next week. How I feel about things is still a mystery to me. My fury is still there, but it's mixed up with other feelings I can't quite put my finger on. The youngsters who somehow know about me, the preserved chamber, and the unsent letters are all making me rethink how I perceived the previous 6 years. I have to return to the hospital right now to get an update on the baby's health. Next week, when I return to Boston, I will write more. I'm just attempting to live day by day for the time being. Update 3. After spending another week in Connecticut, this time with Nathan, I just got back to Boston. It was a complex experience. Ashley asked me to invite him expressly because she wanted to meet the person who makes her sister happy. The dynamics were revealing and unpleasant. I made a startling discovery while we were there. I discovered years' worth of Ashley's treatment records while assisting my mother with organizing some medical paperwork. My parents never disclosed to me that she had been dealing with bipolar disorder since she was in her teens. Manic episodes occurred at the same time as the numerous pregnancies and relationship problems. This information adds another level of complexity to the process, but it does not justify the way they treated me. The most pivotal event occurred when I spoke with Ashley privately in her hospital room. She was more lucid than I had seen her in years, most likely as a result of taking her medications as prescribed following the accident. She acknowledged that, even in high school, she had envied my success and security. "You made everything look so easy," she stated. And I felt like the family disappointment in comparison. Neither of us missed the irony. Nathan's presence proved to be quite important. I was too deeply invested to notice what he saw. One evening at supper, he pointed out that my father was unable to look me in the eye, displaying signals of intense embarrassment instead of the apathy I had always imagined. Additionally, he saw my mother's tense tendency to begin statements and then stop them quickly, seemingly out of fear of saying the wrong thing. The children now play a big role in my emotional equation. Charlie, 6 million, my oldest nephew, showed me his architectural drawings, which were sloppy but sincere attempts to replicate images of my work that my parents must have shown him. When the younger ones, Ava, 4F, and Lucas, 2M, begin referring to Nathan as uncle, it has a deeper impact on him than he anticipated. The infant will need to remain in the NICU for at least another month, although her condition has stabilized. My parents have been sleeping in the waiting area on shifts, refusing to leave their grandchildren alone, according to a nurse who spoke to us during one of our hospital stays. They appear emotionally and physically worn out. I've made some sensible choices. A family therapist with expertise in intergenerational trauma is what I'm setting up. I've also discussed working remotely for a few days every month with my company. I haven't changed my mind about returning to Connecticut though. I now live and work in Boston. On the way back to Boston, Nathan and I had a lengthy conversation. His statement, "Sometimes the hardest part of healing isn't forgiving others. It's forgiving yourself for still caring," really resonated with me. I've been feeling bad about not being able to control my rage in its purest, protective form, so this really spoke to me. I have a crucial client meeting tomorrow, so I must concentrate. Strangely, at the moment, routine work duties feel both anchoring and inconsequential. After our first family therapy appointment, which is set for next week, I'll provide another update. Update 4. Something important happened during my parents' trip to Boston last weekend, so I had to write this update. You read correctly. They traveled to Boston ostensibly to talk about important issues pertaining to the family situation. I initially consented to meet them in a neutral setting, a peaceful cafe close to the public garden. But they persisted in touring my residence because they claimed to be interested in learning more about my life. I reluctantly consented after speaking with Nathan and establishing explicit guidelines on the length of their stay. It was surprising how they responded to my house. Normally stoic, my father broke down when he saw my architecture awards in my home office. However, their true purpose caught me completely off guard. They produced paperwork that demonstrated they had been covertly putting money aside for me ever since they expelled me. I've never witnessed my father sobbing so much in my life. He clarified that for 6 years, they had established a different savings account and contributed the amount equal to my college tuition each month. It has grown to a significant amount with interest. Their justification? They intended to leave it in their will because they were too embarrassed to deal with me personally. A fierce confrontation resulted from this revelation. I let out years' worth of suppressed rage because I could no longer contain it. "Do you think money can fix what you did?" I yelled. "I lived in my vehicle. I didn't eat. I tried to keep up my grades by working till I was worn out." My father then made a statement that really stopped me cold. "We don't expect forgiveness," he stated. "We just want you to know that your suffering has haunted us every single day." He then showed me his diary, which detailed all of my accomplishments that he had followed over the years via social media and professional networks. He mentioned my advancements, my first significant project, and even the Sustainable Design Prize I received the previous year. After sobbing quietly, my mother finally opened out about Ashley's past mental health issues. Evidently, they had observed similar behavioral tendencies in Ashley's early years but disregarded the warning signs in favor of managing me as the stable child. She acknowledged that their parenting style had been completely incorrect. When they mentioned their most recent worries, the topic of conversation changed. They disclosed that Marcus, Ashley's ex-husband, is attempting to obtain full custody of their child by using the accident and Ashley's history of mental illness. Just as she is beginning to stabilize with her new medicine regimen, they are concerned that this could lead to another breakdown. This is when the situation becomes complex. I'm no longer being asked to relocate back. Rather, they are asking me to assist them in locating a reputable mental health center in Boston for Ashley and the child after she is discharged from the NICU. In order to assist with the other children while Ashley receives the care she needs, they wish to sell their Connecticut home and relocate closer. Nathan, who remained close by to provide assistance if necessary, subsequently made a significant observation. They're finally acknowledging their mistakes and trying to find actual solutions instead of just dumping responsibilities on you. I'm still taking it all in. Although the money they save doesn't change the past, their persistent covert efforts at making amends reveal a level of regret I hadn't previously thought of. My father's journal seems like a heartbreaking reminder of what might have been, a father who was proud of his daughter's accomplishments but was too embarrassed to say so out loud. To learn more about Ashley's custody dispute and what part, if any, I should play in it, I'm meeting with a family law lawyer tomorrow. Additionally, I'm looking into psychiatric hospitals that focus in postpartum mental health treatment. Regarding my assistance with Ashley's treatment plans, I have not responded to them. Although I have a strong desire to uphold rigid limits, I also acknowledge that this could be an opportunity for genuine, structural change in our family's dynamic. This time, with the right boundaries and expert assistance, things could be different. Once I've decided how I want to participate in these new developments, I'll provide another update. Update 5. I've made some decisions regarding my relationship with my family going forward after giving it a lot of thought and attending multiple family therapy sessions. Initially, in response to my parents' inquiry concerning Ashley's care, I assisted them in locating a respectable mental health and postpartum care center in Boston. I did, however, clarify that my participation would be strictly limited and professional. Although I will not be personally involved in Ashley's daily care, I was able to connect them with the resources they needed through my professional network. My parents' savings account has been transformed into a trust fund, of which I am the trustee, for Ashley's children's education. This arrangement guarantees that the funds will be utilized suitably while upholding professional boundaries. Nathan used his financial planning and contacts to assist put things up. I never imagined how my relationship with my family would change over time. I've developed a methodical approach to keeping in touch that safeguards my personal well-being, even if I won't be returning to Connecticut or taking on any caregiving duties. We've decided to continue family therapy sessions and have frequent video chats with the kids, with Ashley being contacted directly only in case of emergencies. Even though my mother still calls a lot, I've seen a big shift in the way she handles things. She no longer makes demands or guilt trips before providing family information, and she respects my limits when I tell her that I'm too busy to talk. My father made the most unexpected revelation. In addition to sending me a formal written apology outlining particular occasions in which he failed me as a father, he began visiting his own therapist. Instead of the cliched, "I'm sorry for everything," I had anticipated, I received a considerate acknowledgement of particular negative behaviors and how they affected my life. After being admitted to the treatment center, Ashley is beginning to show recovery. At last, the infant is well and no longer in the NICU. I've made arrangements for a child psychologist to work with her older children to help them deal with these changes while I keep an emotional distance. I've decided not to include my family too much in our wedding arrangements, which Nathan and I are moving forward with. Although they will be invited as guests, friends who helped me through my darkest moments will play the customary family roles in the wedding. I am content with my choices as I look to the future. It's a carefully planned relationship that safeguards my mental health while recognizing the intricacy of familial ties, even though it's not the total reunion some might expect for. I've discovered that taking care of family members doesn't have to mean compromising my own health or giving into toxic relationships. There isn't a tidy, happy ending to my story where everything is forgiven and forgotten. Rather, it ends realistically, with relationships being reframed on better terms, professional assistance being sought, and boundaries being upheld. That's the best we can do at times, and that's acceptable. My last update will be this one. We are grateful to everyone who helped and counseled us along the way. I was able to strike a balance between self-preservation and compassion because of your ideas. I found out my boyfriend and sister were secretly dating. I decided to get revenge and make them pay for how they treated me. Life has a tendency of delivering unexpected turns, don't you think? I never imagined that I'd be here sharing my heart with strangers online. Up until a month ago, I believed I had everything figured out. I'm a 48-year-old woman who lives in New York City. In addition to having a close-knit family and a loving boyfriend, I was the vice president of a prosperous advertising agency. Right now, nothing is certain to me now. It all began on what appeared to be a typical Tuesday. When I realized I had left my USB drive at home, I was in a hurry to attend to a crucial customer appointment. Not a huge thing, is it? I requested my sister Sarah, 44F, who was spending the week with us, to email me the files when I contacted her. I had no idea how much one small request would rock my world. My heart stopped when I opened Sarah's email. I was staring at private messages between her and my boyfriend, Tom, 45 megabytes, rather than my job files. I initially assumed it was some sort of twisted prank. But the terrible reality dawned on me as I read through the innumerable conversations. For the previous 6 months, my sister and my boyfriend had been having an affair. I had the feeling that I would get sick. I could hardly grasp my phone since my hands were shaking so much. In the hope that I was misinterpreting those messages, I must have read them a dozen times. However, everything was in black and white, including the inside jokes, the flirty banter, and the in-depth accounts of their covert meetings. How I handled that client encounter is beyond me. With my mind spinning from everything I had learned, I was operating automatically. I hurried home as soon as it was over, resolved to face Tom. He was sitting on the couch watching TV as if nothing were wrong when I stormed into our flat. My blood boiled at the sight of him, so careless and uninformed. How long? I threw my phone at him and demanded it. After a little period of confusion, his face became pale as he came to terms with what I had witnessed. He stammered, I don't know what you're talking about, but I could see the remorse on his face. Don't lie to me, Tom, I spit out. I noticed the messages. Sarah and you. For what duration has this been occurring? He initially made an effort to deny it, but as I recounted passages from their conversations, he broke down. He finally said, 6 months, in a voice that was almost audible above a whisper. It simply occurred. We didn't intend for it to, he said, but I interrupted. I didn't want to listen to his justifications. 6 months. A half year of deceit and treachery. He was with my sister when I was working late, assuming he was watching TV at home. I became physically nauseated at the prospect. I said, get out, my voice trembling with hurt and rage. I don't ever want to see you again. Tom remained silent. I was left alone in the apartment we had shared for the previous 2 years after he took a few items and departed. I started crying as soon as he left. I wept till my eyes were dry. After that, I sat there feeling empty and numb. How could they harm me like this? Since I was a young child, Sarah has been my best friend and sister. Growing up, we had shared everything, dreams, clothes, and secrets. What about Tom? He seemed like the one to me. We discussed getting married and creating a future together. Everything felt like a lie now. I gave Sarah a call the following day. To comprehend why she would betray me in this way, I wanted to hear it directly from her. I could tell she already knew when her face showed up on my screen. She appeared as though she hadn't slept because of her swollen, red eyes. She began. I'm so sorry. But I interrupted her. Why? With a chilly tone, I inquired. Why would you harm me in this way? As she attempted to explain, Sarah broke down and started crying. She sobbed. I didn't mean for it to happen. Tom and I simply clicked. I believe I'm in love with him, but I know that's no justification. Her remark struck me like a blow to the body. Are you in love with him? In love with my boyfriend, my own sister? In my stomach, it was like a knife twisting. Feeling more alone than ever, I hung up the phone without saying anything else. I contacted our parents, John, 55 million, and Mary, 53 feet, since I wanted to talk to someone in order to make sense of this mess. I believed that they would be sympathetic and supportive, and that they would be outraged on my behalf. Rather, their response made me feel even more deceived. My mom said, "Oh honey," after I told them everything. "Sarah probably didn't mean to cause you any harm. You are aware of her tendency toward impulsivity." What I was hearing was unbelievable. Didn't intend to cause me pain. She spent 6 months having sex with my boyfriend. Now, my father added. Let's not rush things. The most essential thing is family. If you all get together and have a conversation, I'm confident you can resolve this. Figure this out. Were they sincere? How could I simply forgive and go on from something like this? They obviously cared more about maintaining order than they did about my feelings. On top of everything else, their response felt like yet another betrayal. As the days went by, I saw that I alternated between intense fury and debilitating melancholy. I was unable to eat or sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tom and Sarah smiling together over their deception of me. My thoughts were consumed by the betrayal. I wasn't interested in playing happy families, but my parents kept calling to attempt to set up a family gathering to sort things out. How could I ever have faith in Tom or Sarah again? Knowing what my sister had done, how could I sit across from her at the dinner table? Something inside of me exploded during one of these phone conversations with my mother. When I cut her off, she was rambling on about forgiving others and moving on. No, I firmly answered. I won't act like everything is fine. They cannot be forgiven for what they did. But it's not healthy to hold on to anger, sweetie, she objected. You must. I need my family to realize how much I'm hurting, I interrupt. But I'm done because it's obvious that won't happen. I've had enough of Sarah. I've had enough of Tom. And this is the end of our talk. With my heart pounding, I hung up. I had clarity for the first time since this whole nightmare started. I had had enough of being the victim. I had to take charge of my life once more. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer and called in sick to work the following day. As I told my narrative, Jessica, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, listened calmly and then leaned forward, her eyes concentrated and alert. You have choices, and you have been wronged, she continued. Given your professional relationship with Tom, we can investigate this from a number of perspectives, including emotional distress, breach of trust, and potentially even workplace harassment. I sensed hope, something I hadn't felt in weeks, as Jessica outlined possible tactics. Hope for justice, not for forgiveness or reconciliation. I wish I could transform this suffering into something strong. How about Sarah? I inquired. Is there anything we can do to stop her involvement? Jessica gave a slow nod. Even though dealing with family members is more difficult, there are still options available to us. We can at least make sure that any assets that the family may have in common are safeguarded. That afternoon, as I walked out of Jessica's office, my head was buzzing with potential solutions. I had a sense of direction and purpose for the first time since I found out about the affair. I was no longer only a victim. I was a lady with a purpose. I took a seat at my computer that evening and began planning. I started by making a list of all the things I wanted to do. I wanted to protect my financial future, reveal Tom's unethical behavior at work, make sure Sarah was held accountable for her activities, and demonstrate to my parents that I wouldn't be coerced or held responsible. I felt an increasing sensation of empowerment as I typed. I had indeed been harmed. I had indeed been deceived. However, I refused to let that define who I was. Rather, I was going to turn this suffering into motivation to start a new phase of my life. I was aware that the path ahead would not be simple. There would be more conflicts and challenging discussions. It's possible that my family won't comprehend or agree with my choices. But I felt strong for the first time in weeks. I was resolved. I made the decision to return to work tomorrow. I would take a proud stance and begin implementing my goals. Sarah and Tom believed they could treat me badly and yet get away with it. My parents believed they could use guilt to get me to ignore everything. They were all going to find out how mistaken they were. I noticed myself in the mirror as I shut down my laptop and prepared for bed. The devastated, deceived victim I had been for the previous 2 weeks was not the lady staring back at me. She was prepared to face any obstacles because she was a fighter. I said in a whisper to my reflection, "Watch out, world. I'm returning stronger than before." For the first time since this whole experience started, I felt completely at peace as I turned off the light and went to bed. I was eager to begin the first day of my new life, which was tomorrow. I'm going to talk to you now, Reddit. Have any of you had a similar situation? How did you respond to it? And how do you feel about my revenge plan? Is it excessive, or is my desire to hold them all accountable for their actions justified? As I start my new path, I would value any guidance or assistance you might provide. Update 1. 2 weeks have passed since my last post, and I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for their guidance and encouragement. Your remarks have been a lifesaver for me at this trying time. I'll give you an update because a lot has happened. The revenge strategy comes first. After speaking with my attorney, Jessica, I made the decision to act in several ways. First, we filed a formal complaint about Tom's inappropriate connection with me and his following romance with my sister with his human resources department. Considering that we are in the same industry, it was a risky move, but I couldn't allow him to get away with it. The reaction was prompt. While an inquiry was conducted, Tom was put on administrative leave. I'll admit that I felt a little satisfied as I watched him being led from the premises with a box of personal belongings. However, it didn't last long. I was struck hard by the fact that my private life was now being used as fodder for office rumors. My personal role at work has grown more complex. Even though my supervisors have been encouraging, I can sense the sidelong stares and whispered discussions that end when I walk into a room. It's obvious that people are curious about my level of knowledge, my anticipated length of stay, and my stability in managing large accounts. In an effort to demonstrate that my personal drama won't impact my professional performance, I've poured myself into my work. Things have gotten worse on the family front. Do you recall how my parents pushed for a family gathering to work things out? It was a catastrophe, but it did happen. A quiet room in a downtown restaurant served as our neutral meeting spot. My blood pressure shot up the moment I went in and saw Sarah sitting there, looking anxious yet somehow defiant. Naturally, my parents were also present, serving as mediators. My father started by saying, "Girls, we're here to talk this out like adults. Until our family decides how to proceed, nobody is going anywhere." I couldn't contain my laughter. "Go ahead? Are you serious? There is no way to move past this." Sarah's voice trembled as she spoke. "I am aware that what I did was improper. I sincerely apologize. However, shouldn't we at least attempt to resolve this?" With a mixture of anger and incredulity, I turned to face her. "Resolve this? You spent 6 months having sex with my partner. Day after day, you deceived me. What do you want to do now? Pretend it never occurred and give it a hug." "She's not saying that," my mother interrupted. "As a family, we simply want to figure out how to get better. You two have always had a tight relationship." I corrected her, saying, "We're close. Tense in the past. And who is to blame for that?" From there, the discussion took a different turn. My parents begged, Sarah wept, and I felt numb. It was obvious that they all expected me to put family unity ahead of my personal sentiments and to finally forgive and move on. I had had enough guilt-tripping and pointless discussions after an hour. With a loud scrape of my chair against the floor, I got up. "This is useless," I remarked. "It appears that you have all determined how this should proceed without taking my feelings into account. Well, I'm not complying. I'm finished." I heard my mother calling after me as I left, but I chose not to turn around. I disabled their social media accounts and phone numbers that evening. Although it was a bold step, I needed time to recover from their unrelenting pressure. Things took an intriguing turn on the Tom front. He contacted me a few days after he was placed on leave, asking me to withdraw my complaint to HR rather than offering an apology or pleading for my forgiveness. He begged over the phone that this may destroy his career. "Can't we deal with this in private?" His boldness astounded me. "Take this in private? Similar to how you and Sarah had your 6-month clandestine affair." He was bold enough to sound angry. "That isn't the same, we're talking about my livelihood here." I retorted icily, "You ought to have considered that before you chose to sleep with my sister. Tom, actions have repercussions. You need to face yours now." I experienced a range of feelings once I hung up. Hearing the desperation in his voice and knowing that he was finally being held accountable for his acts made me feel a certain amount of satisfaction. However, I was also worn out from the drama and the continual reminders of their treachery. At that point, I decided. I required a change, a new beginning. I started researching employment prospects in other cities. The idea of uprooting my life was both thrilling and horrifying, but the more I considered it, the more it seemed right. With a Seattle boutique agency, I discovered a good lead. Following a round of interviews, they offered me an offer after being impressed by my experience and portfolio. Although it was a lateral transfer in terms of employment, the opportunity to reinvent myself and the change of environment were invaluable. My supervisor was sympathetic but obviously unhappy when I gave notice at work. He questioned, "Are you certain about this? Here, you've established a solid career. Don't allow personal problems to pull you away." I was grateful for his care, but I had already made up my mind. "I'm positive," I assured him. "I need to start over on both a personal and professional level." I was shocked by how many coworkers contacted me to offer their support when word circulated about my upcoming leave. Many of them talked about how they overcame personal obstacles and changed their identities in the middle of their careers. Their words of support made me more determined. I've been going to a therapist to help me process everything in the middle of this. I have benefited greatly from Dr. Larson's, 58 degrees Fahrenheit, assistance in processing my anguish and anger. She has assisted me in seeing that, although my emotions are true, I must not allow them to control me. During one session, she informed me that while seeking revenge may feel good at the time, it won't make your grief go away. Living a good life and going on is the best form of retaliation. I'm making an effort to heed her advice and concentrate on creating my new life rather than destroying my previous one. It's not always simple, and sometimes I still feel like my wrath will get the better of me. But I'm getting better. As I get ready to relocate to Seattle and pack up my apartment, I'm thinking about how much has changed in only a few short weeks. My sister, my partner, and, in a sense, my parents have all passed away. However, I've also developed a new feeling of self, a resolve I was unaware I had. I am aware that the path ahead will not be simple. It's intimidating to start anew in a new city and start my life over from scratch. But I'm looking forward to the future for the first time in a long time. I'm interested to see who I'll develop into once I'm not burdened by expectations from my family or betrayal. I hear those who told me to forgive, move on, and take the high road. I no longer seek retribution for its own sake. Yes, I'm working for justice, but more than that, I'm working for my own happiness and mental health. So, Reddit, that's the current situation. I'm going to start a new chapter in my life, putting the hurt and treachery behind me. Although I'm anxious, thrilled, and a bit afraid, I'm primarily proud of myself for taking charge of my life. I appreciate all of your help and guidance, you have no idea how much it has meant. After I'm settled in Seattle, I'll provide another update. Good luck to me. Update 2. 3 months have passed since my last post, and I'm writing this from my new Seattle apartment with a view of Puget Sound. Every day, the view reminds me of my progress. It's exciting and scary to move to a new city in your late 40s. Although everything is new, there is a certain liberation that comes with not knowing. Nobody here is aware of my past, my suffering, or my guilt. Whoever I want to be, I can be. In the best way conceivable, my new position at the boutique agency has been demanding. I'm taking on multiple roles because the team is smaller. I've had to learn new talents and step outside of my comfort zone as a result. I am gradually forming new friendships. It's a start, even though it's not as good as the close relationships I had in New York. Let's move on to the fallout from my revenge plan. I place that in quotes because, in retrospect, it was more about justice and taking back control of my life than it was about getting even. In the end, Tom lost his job due to professional misconduct. A history of inappropriate behavior with other coworkers was also discovered during the HR probe. My old employer called me and thanked me for coming forward and apologized for not detecting Tom's actions sooner. The repercussions for Sarah have been less professional and more personal. As word of her affair spread, she lost acquaintances, and our parents finally seemed to understand the seriousness of what she had done. She wrote me a tearful letter last week, filled with explanations and apologies. She talked about how she had always felt like she was living in my shadow and of her own fears. The letter concluded with an appeal for pardon. For the first time, I sensed a tiny fracture in the wall of wrath I had constructed, but I'm still not there, not even close. I haven't replied yet, and I may not do so. Additionally, my parents have begun contacting me more often. Instead of advocating for reconciliation, they have been helping me adjust to my new life. In order to send a housewarming present, my mom even inquired for my address. My own self-change has been the most notable. Peace has slowly taken the place of the rage that previously overwhelmed me. Even though I still get angry occasionally, they are become less frequent and less severe. This approach has been greatly aided by my therapist, Dr. Larson. Forgiveness is something we've been working on, not for Tom or Sarah, but for me. She has aided me in seeing that forgiving someone does not include accepting their actions or allowing them to return to my life. It entails letting go of the grip that rage has on me. I've been concentrating on personal development and self-care. I've started taking photography classes, joined a reading group, and started doing yoga and meditation. I went on my first date since the whole situation last weekend. It wasn't a life-altering experience, but it was nice to meet someone new. His name is Mark, 52 million. In terms of my career, I'm succeeding in unexpected ways. My enthusiasm for advertising has been rekindled by the new beginning. I presented a campaign that challenged convention last week. We got the account because the client thought it was fantastic. It served as a potent reminder of my value on both a personal and professional level. There have also been difficulties. There are days when loneliness is too much to bear. I long for the comforts of my former existence. Sometimes I wonder why I choose to move away from everything. But then I think back to where I was only a few months ago. Angry, damaged, and caught in a vicious cycle of betrayal and suffering. I know I made the right decision when I consider how far I've come. I want those of you experiencing similar difficulties to know that there is hope. You'll make it through this. You'll discover a strength you never knew you had, and you'll emerge from the experience stronger and wiser, if not unscathed. I have a long way to go. I'm still recovering, learning, and developing. But I'm looking forward to the future for the first time in a long time. What occurred to me no longer defines me. Instead, what I decide to do next does. Reddit, I appreciate you joining me on this adventure. Some of my darkest moments have been illuminated by your encouragement. Although I have no idea what the future will bring, I am certain that I am prepared to meet it head on. When there are noteworthy developments, I'll provide another update. I'll stay here in Seattle until then, appreciating fresh starts and second chances as I watch the sunset over the sound. Update 3, the adage, revenge is a dish best served cold, has never felt more fitting as it does now, 6 months after my last update. I've been quite busy, and now my well-planned outcomes are finally materializing. Let's start by discussing Tom. Do you recall his dismissal from our previous employer? But that was only the start. I've been methodically damaging his industry-wide professional reputation. How? Thanks to former coworkers who owed me favors, I was able to produce an anonymous blog post that detailed his misbehavior and included censored evidence from our HR department. In the world of advertising, the blog gained a lot of popularity, but I continued. Posing as a headhunter, I created a phony LinkedIn profile and contacted Tom, promising him interviews at prominent agencies. Naturally, my pals who are actors staged these interviews. Tom would arrive, wait for hours, and then be informed that the interview was not planned. This occurred 5 times before he realized what was going on. Last week was the coup de grace. Using some cunning, I managed to get Tom invited to participate in a large advertising conference. This, he believed, was his opportunity to turn his life around. He was unaware that I had positioned multiple persons in the crowd. They questioned him sharply about his prior misbehavior when it came time for Q&A. After stumbling and perspiring, Tom bounded off the stage. Since the video became public, there's no longer any prospect that he will be able to recover his career. Let's go on to Sarah. With that heartfelt letter, my darling sister believed she might slither her way back into my favor. I chose to let my deeds speak louder than my words rather than answer. I employed an excellent PI to investigate her past, and they found a wealth of information. As it happens, Sarah has a history of taking out loans from our parents and never repaying them. I submitted our parents a thorough report that included dates and amounts for each of these loans. They were, to put it mildly, shocked. However, it wasn't all. Additionally, the PI found proof that Sarah had embezzled money from her job. That little issue was resolved when her company's audit department received an anonymous tip. When I discovered that Sarah had been lying about her educational background, however, it was the cherry on top. Although she stated on her resume that she had completed her degree, she never did. After making a brief phone call to her human resources department, Sarah was declared unemployed and unemployable. Our parents, on the other hand, at last realized the truth. To supposedly clear the air, I called a family gathering. Rather, I showed a PowerPoint that listed all of Sarah's deceptions and manipulations across the years. It was immensely satisfying to see the changes in their expressions from bewilderment to shock to rage. Sarah is now totally cut off from them, both financially and emotionally. This degree of retaliation may seem extreme to you, but I can promise you that it is just. I almost got destroyed by these people. They attempted to gaslight me into forgiveness, abused my confidence, and diminished my sense of value. Forgiveness is not an option. Despite everything, I've been doing well in Seattle. My new position? I currently lead a boutique agency as its CEO. As it turns out, the owner wanted to retire, and I made him an irresistible offer. It was worthwhile even if I had to spend a sizable portion of my savings. Now, I have the authority to ban Tom and Sarah from a whole industry. My personal life has also changed in an intriguing way. Do you recall the architect, Mark? He has his own spiteful streak, it turns out. He offered some inventive ways to make his ex-wife's life miserable when she cheated on him. We are now allies in life and retaliation. Being with someone who sympathizes with my suffering and encourages me to take action is thrilling. In addition, I have established a support group for those who have experienced familial betrayal. I've gained some wonderful allies, and it's been helpful. We encourage one another, exchange tactics, and sometimes even assist one another in plotting retaliation. I adore it. It's like a book club with a twist. Some of you may be wondering if any of this makes me feel bad. The answer is definitely no. I provided Tom and Sarah the opportunity to express genuine regret and make amends. Rather, They attempted to control me and force me to forgive before I was ready. They are now realizing that their acts have repercussions. I want to respond to those of you who suggested that I be the greater person or take the high road. Sometimes it's overrated. Fire must sometimes be put out with fire. I'm not saying that everyone should follow this route, but for me, it was essential. This retaliation has been empowering, therapeutic, and well worth the effort. I feel a sense of calm that I haven't experienced in years as I sit in my corner office with a view of the Seattle skyline. The rage that used to devour me has given way to contentment. It feels amazing to be in charge of my story now. Remind yourself that you don't have to be a victim if you find yourself in a similar circumstance. You don't know how powerful you are. Don't be scared to use it, but use it carefully. My last update will be this one. I'm ending this chapter of my life by making sure that the people who harmed me never forget what they did, not by forgiving and moving on. I appreciate everyone who has followed my journey. Cheers to fresh starts, delicious retaliation, and the strength that comes from taking charge of your own destiny. Be careful, world. Not only am I back, but I'm returning with a bang. My father crushes my dreams to protect the golden child and refuses to pay for my tuition, but I get my sweet revenge. I have a younger brother, 28, and we were raised by our dad, 56, ever since we were in middle school. My dad has always favored my brother over me, and with time, I got used to it. I was never the kind of son that my dad wanted because, unlike him, I had no interest in sports or doing the typical macho stuff that boys do. I was always more into more typically feminine things, which is why I was a huge mama's boy growing up. I loved everything to do with the kitchen, reading books, and even singing. My dad tried to make me play football with him, but I was no good at it, so gradually we grew apart. My brother, on the other hand, was exactly the kind of son that my father wanted. He was a rough and tough boy, not afraid of getting dirty while playing or even getting hurt. He was the perfect son for my dad, and it was very obvious that he loved my brother way more than he loved me. He'd always have great things to say about my brother but never me. My mother, however, never played favorites. She was fair to both of us, and that's why I loved her more as well. I did put in an effort to befriend my dad and spend time with him, but once we'd grown apart, he didn't seem too keen on fixing our relationship either. Unfortunately, the glue holding our messed up family together, my mother, passed away when I was in 8th grade. She'd been suffering from cancer, and by the time we realized it, it was too late for her to be saved. She was gone before we knew it. My mother's passing pretty much devastated me, and I kind of spiraled during that time. My only solace was the kitchen, and I'd whip up something new every day as if my life depended on it. My mother was a great cook, and she'd tell me often that had she not been forced into taking over her dad's business, she probably would have become a chef. So cooking was the only thing that brought me any comfort, since my dad and brother were no help in dealing with my feelings. They suppressed any emotional reaction they'd had to my mother's passing, and if anything, grew even more distant from me when, in normal families, something like this would have brought us closer. My fixation on cooking pissed my dad off even more, and he'd keep bugging me to get out of the damn kitchen and do something more manly. One day, when he'd had enough, he even told me that if he saw me in the kitchen again, he'd make me do all the other household chores as well. He told me to be more like my brother and man up, which ended in a huge fight where I told him he never loved me, and he agreed to it. It was finally out in the open, and I guess it was pretty much the last day that my father and I spoke to each other so openly, because after that, I stopped trying to win him over altogether, and he didn't seem to care about it either. For the next few years, I spent all the time I had in my room, listening to music and studying new recipes. I was determined to make this whole chef thing work out, not just for myself, but also for my mother. Meanwhile, my dad and I only spoke when it was absolutely necessary. My brother didn't care about me much either and ignored me, just like our dad did. So after my mom passed away, I basically had nobody I could count on. Finally, when it was time for me to apply to colleges, I decided to apply to a few of the top culinary schools as well as normal colleges, so that I'd at least have a shot. I didn't know if my dad would agree to it, but I had to try. At the very least, I'd already interned at a restaurant secretly that summer and had some experience. I had even managed to make them write a recommendation letter for me, which helped greatly. I ended up getting accepted into several of the schools I had applied to, including one of the best, which just so happened to be in France. I was thrilled that this was finally happening for me, but I was equally nervous since this would mean having to ask my dad for permission. I'd already made up my mind to beg him to let me go if he seemed reluctant, because I just absolutely had to make this happen for myself. I wasn't prepared to give up on my dreams under any circumstances. So I did tell my father about it eventually, and while I was ready for him to reject my request, saying that it wasn't a masculine profession. I was absolutely not prepared for him to decline paying my tuition at all. I still remember being really confused when he told me that he wouldn't be paying for my education at all, since it wasn't as if my dad was poor in the slightest. As a matter of fact, he was pretty well off and could easily afford to send me to France, but money wasn't the reason he wasn't ready to pay for my tuition. It was the fact that if I went to France and joined such a reputable school, it would make my younger brother feel insecure. He was struggling with his grades and couldn't bring himself to focus, so my dad wanted me to either go to community college or find a way to pay for my own tuition. I was astonished that he would do something so cruel to his own son and didn't know what to say to him. I tried to tell him that I needed this, but he was hell-bent and absolutely unwilling to pay for my tuition. He even told me that my brother's well-being was his topmost priority and that he didn't want me competing with his son. I could hardly even believe that this was happening because I couldn't imagine any other father in the world crushing their child's dreams like this just for their favorite. After a lot of pleading and sobbing, when he still refused to budge, I ended up getting into a huge fight with him where I said a lot of things to him and then left his house for good. I started living with my maternal aunt, my mother's older sister, instead. The only reason I hadn't moved out earlier was because I found comfort in the house where I'd grown up with my mom, and also because I didn't want to change schools, which I'd have to do if I moved in with my aunt, since she lived pretty far away from the high school I went to. I told her all about my dad and how he'd outright refused to pay my tuition, and that I needed her help. It felt like crap asking her for a ton of money since she wasn't as rich as my dad, but she reassured me that she'd take care of all my expenses. Somehow, she managed to get all her friends to pitch in and sent me to the culinary school of my dreams, and I'm always going to be grateful for that. Once I got there, I worked part-time as well and tried to make the most of my time there to make all the money that was being spent on me worth it. I worked really, really hard and made my way up. When I graduated, I was one of the most skilled chefs there and even got a job just a few months after I graduated. I started working at a really high-end French restaurant, and I sent half of my salary back to my aunt to repay whatever debt I had. Slowly but steadily, I was just lucky that I didn't have to rely on a student loan, or maybe I'd never be able to pay any of it off. Anyway, I worked in France for a few years before finally moving back home, once I'd saved up enough to open up my own restaurant. It's been a couple of years, and in the meantime, I worked at another restaurant here as the head chef while also working towards my goal of opening up my own restaurant someday. It was all finalized a few weeks ago, and I was able to finally open up the restaurant I'd been working towards for so long. Two of my friends from back when I was in France also joined in on my business idea and became co-owners with me, which is why I was grateful when they allowed me to choose what we were going to name the restaurant. They happened to be from the same state, so we were all okay with opening our restaurant in my city of choice as well. I chose to name it after my mother, which was a really lucky coincidence for us since my mother actually has a really beautiful and uncommon name in the city we called our home. It was all finally falling into place. A few days back, we even had a little party for a few select guests before we were officially open for business. Of course, I invited my aunt and a few of her friends who'd also pitched in to help pay for my tuition. I also invited some of my friends back from school, but that was pretty much it. I didn't invite my father and brother because of obvious reasons. Even if I'd wanted to, I couldn't have since I hadn't spoken to them ever since I'd left home, and neither had they bothered to ever get back in touch with me. I guess all of us were better off this way, but I should have known that they would definitely show up to piggyback on my success someday. And that's exactly what happened. At the party we threw, they showed up an hour before the party was due to begin but weren't stopped by security since we shared the last name. They claimed that they were here to surprise me, and at least that bit was true. I was definitely surprised when I saw them. My dad and brother greeted me like nothing awful had ever happened in the past and were really warm towards me, probably for the first time in my entire life. I was shocked to see them, so I just froze when they first entered the restaurant. My buddies noticed that something was off, and after politely greeting my family, they left us on our own. I'm thankful that they were able to pick up on my discomfort. I still hadn't recovered from the shock of seeing them again when they dropped another bomb on me and showed me a gift that they'd brought for me. It was a portrait of my mother, and my dad even told me that he commissioned it for me to hang up in my restaurant. As soon as he'd heard that a new fancy restaurant with this name was opening up in our city, he'd known that it was definitely none other than his son. He even told me that he'd always known that I had it in me. My brother, too, was jumping on the bandwagon and praising me, telling me that he was immensely proud of me. I couldn't believe my ears and knew instantly that something was very strange about all of this. I didn't say much and kept waiting for them to get to the point because I knew there must have been a reason for them to be here. I let them speak, and eventually, they did get to the reason they were here. Apparently, my brother was working as a bartender now, and even that was possible just because my dad had managed to convince a friend of his to give him a job at his club. My brother's grades had kept falling throughout high school and college, and that's why he didn't end up in the high-paying positions my dad had always expected from him. On top of that, he'd also been slacking during his high school football games, which is why he wasn't able to get a sports scholarship either. Ironically, he's the one who ended up having to go to community college because he got rejected everywhere else. What they wanted me to do was make my brother a partner in the business so that he'd have a more respectable position, even though he had done absolutely zilch to deserve it. I had the urge to laugh in their face but somehow managed to hold back and instead told them that I'd think about it. I wasn't going to think about it though. I just didn't want to turn them away. I wanted them to stay for the party because I had a much better plan in mind: to humiliate my family, who'd come out of the woodwork as soon as they received word of my success. They seemed reasonably pleased, but boy, oh boy, they had no idea what was about to come. After a while, our guests started arriving, and in an hour or so, everyone we'd invited was there. I spent the evening socializing while my dad and brother also did the same, and I even heard them boasting about me to a few people while I marveled at their sheer audacity. Towards the end of the party, it was time for the hosts, namely me and my partners, to give a toast. My friends went first since I wanted to save the best for last. Then, finally, it was my turn to speak. That day, I was finally going to speak my heart out. I started off by thanking all my guests and raised a drink to my mother first since she was the reason I'd even ever been able to achieve so much. I strongly believed that it was her faith in me as a child that had made me believe I could do any of this at all, and that had stayed with me even after she was gone. After I'd paid my due respects, I decided to get to the real respect as well. I brought up how I'd had to take a loan from my aunt and her friends to go to culinary school and thanked her as well. Then finally, I got to the reason I'd had to take a loan for my tuition in the first place: my family. I brought up how I'd grown up with a father who never loved me or had any faith in me, and always berated me for having feminine interests like cooking. I had a younger brother who was the replica of my dad. I told them all about how my dad had refused to pay for my tuition out of fear that I'd end up becoming more successful than my younger brother, who was his golden child. This is why I ended up leaving home, but despite all odds, I was able to rise and become who I am today. So in a way, they did deserve some credit for creating all the hardships I've had to face. Otherwise, I never would have found out how resilient I was. A lot of people shot my dad and brother the nastiest looks they could manage while I was saying all of this, and even they had the good sense to at least look ashamed, even though I knew that they didn't feel that way in the slightest. Anyway, I then walked over to my dad and brother and actually hugged them, putting up the same pretense that they had when they visited me today. "Two can play this game," I announced. Because you'd shown up to celebrate my success today, I'd forgiven them for whatever had happened in the past, and I was even ready to give my brother the job of a bartender at my restaurant. To other people, this obviously seemed like a really emotional reconciliation, and they ended up actually clapping for me at the end of my speech. There were a few wolf whistles. Only my family and I knew that this was nothing more than an attempt to humiliate them, which I'd done quite successfully. But they had to smile and act like they were super grateful for what I'd done since they couldn't exactly storm out angrily, which is exactly what they wanted to do. After a while, when the crowd had cleared out and it was finally time for us to go home, my dad and brother confronted me right outside my restaurant. They were furious, and I swear there were angry tears in my brother's eyes. They demanded an explanation for what I'd done. If I'd never intended on making my brother a partner, then I should have just turned them away as soon as they arrived. I just laughed and told them that this was my form of paying them back for everything they'd done for me over the years. "This is exactly what you deserve." Then I walked away and didn't bother to look back, even when I heard my brother crying about how this was the cruelest thing, and even yelling after me to tell me that I'd regret this. But I didn't care since I was already in my car and was driving away. That happened a couple of days ago, and I haven't heard from them since. My aunt thinks that I might have gone a little too far with this one and should have just kicked them out at first, but I don't agree with her. This was well deserved. I'd had enough of humiliating my father and brother. Update 1. Hey, I decided not to reach out to my family to apologize, in spite of what my aunt had said about me being way too harsh. I don't feel sorry about what I did, so I'm not going to pretend I do and go out of my way to say so. They could have taken the opportunity to apologize to me when they visited me, but they didn't. I explained this to my aunt as well, and while she still believes I shouldn't have done what I did, she hasn't said much about it. I guess this is just one of those areas where we agree to disagree, and I'm okay with that. In other news, my brother has made sure that he goes behind my back to talk crap about me to all our friends from school. It's unfortunate that we went to the same high school, since this just means that random strangers from school are now texting to confirm the rumors that I'd humiliated and then kicked out my dad and brother from my restaurant after feeding them 3-day-old food on purpose. Yeah, he exaggerated the story to make himself seem like the victim, which is pretty unsurprising. Ordinarily, I wouldn't care about petty rumors, but I don't want potential customers taking these rumors seriously. So, I've texted my brother that if he doesn't stop spreading lies about me and my restaurant, then I'll make sure that he loses the job he has right now too. I'm hoping that it works because I really don't feel like dealing with their unnecessary crap right now. I'm really busy with work, and this just isn't the time. Update 2. LOL, my brother texted back saying that he was going to stop only when I'd make him a partner. I don't even understand what level of idiocy and delusion this is. Besides, if he wants to be a partner, then isn't it a pretty stupid idea for him to be talking crap about the same restaurant? I'm pretty sure this is my dad's tactic to ensure his darling son lands a high-profile job without doing any real work. But unfortunately, it's not going to work with me. I've told him that if he doesn't stop, then he'll be hearing from my lawyers and that he's in absolutely no position to be negotiating with me right now. The only reason I haven't done anything yet is because I don't want to get caught up in unnecessary drama, but I'll definitely mess him up if he tries anything funny after this, and he should take this as my last warning. I really hope he does, for his own good. Update 3. So, guys, it's been around a month since the last update, and since I've been really busy, I haven't been able to fill you in on what happened after that. My brother did stop talking crap about me behind my back, but they were still pretty desperate to join in on my success. So, my dad decided to pay me a visit with my brother a few weeks ago, just to intimidate me. They showed up at my house, threatening to sue me for using my mother's name for my restaurant, and even told me that they'd already spoken to a lawyer. So, if I didn't want any trouble, I needed to make my brother a partner as soon as possible. Obviously, I called their bluff immediately since no lawyer would take up such a stupid case. I think they were forgetting a very important fact. She was my mother too, and not just his wife. As far as I was concerned, no law could stop me from using her name. By then, I'd had enough of their bullcrap, so I told them that if they didn't leave me alone, they'd be forcing my hand, and I'd have no option but to call the cops. My brother lost his temper at that point and tried to grab me by the collar, but luckily, my dad held him back. I think it was the constant humiliation that had finally gotten to him and he'd snapped. Well, it wasn't my fault, and they were lucky that I didn't call the cops right then. I told my dad that he needed to get the hell out, but he only told my brother to go cool off in the car and that he wanted to speak to me in private. After my brother left, he tried to manipulate me by telling me that if my mother knew what I was doing to them, then she'd be really upset with me and I should bury the hatchet. At this point, I told him to leave me the hell alone because even I was at my limit. He couldn't just use my mother to get his way. That was just low. To be honest, we were way past the point of reconciliation. Not once had either of them apologized to me, even once, so I really didn't understand why they expected me to forgive them without even asking for it. As for what my mother would feel, I'm sure she would have felt equally let down back when my father had refused to pay for my tuition, and for that matter, every freaking time he made me feel awful about myself. So, he should be the last person to give me a sermon about what my mother would and wouldn't like. I know she's proud of me wherever she is, and nothing that my dad says is going to change that. At least my restaurant is doing well, and hopefully, we'll be able to expand soon enough. My wife disappeared after a girls' trip, and now she's trying to manipulate her way back into my life, acting like nothing ever happened. It's common to hear statements like, "I never saw it coming." That's precisely how it went for me, though. I was married to my wife for the entire 4 years that we were together. To be honest, I thought we were doing well. For the most part, I believed that we were in agreement, and we had plans and a life plan laid out. The problem is that we both desired children. Or I believe that we both did. As soon as we were married, we began to discuss it seriously. She would constantly express her desire for 2 or 3 children, rambling on about the names we would give them, the nursery decor, and everything else. She would even spend time on the internet planning our future children's lives while perusing baby gear and clothing. It kept us connected and was sort of our thing to talk about. We were eager to begin this new chapter in our lives together, and everything appeared to be going according to plan. But after that, we received some terrible news, which really devastated me. We visited a doctor to find out what was wrong after a few months of trying to conceive. To cut a long tale short, it was me. The doctor essentially informed us that our chances of naturally becoming parents were very limited because my count was much too low. It felt like a stomach punch. I felt worthless. Our entire set of plans vanished in a flash. I was hit hard, terribly hard, by the news. I ended up for a while in a fairly awful position. I was a complete disaster at first, but therapy ultimately helped. At first, she seemed to be rather supportive, stating that it didn't matter and that she would be content with us alone. However, there was something strange about the way she said it right from the start. She seems to have dropped it far too soon. She was all about starting a family one minute, and then she claimed she didn't need children to be content. I understand that people change their ideas, but her entire demeanor seemed strange to me. From thinking about baby names, she had completely stopped talking about children. Furthermore, it seemed as though she began to view me in a different light. She would suddenly start making little jabs at me that she had never mentioned before, like how I wasn't taking care of myself, that I should work out, or that I should be more productive around the house. Yes, I could have gained a few pounds, but it seemed like she was constantly looking for reasons to accuse me. She would dismiss it when I questioned her about the abrupt shift in attitude. She would claim that I was being unduly sensitive and that I was only dreaming. But I was aware of a problem. She was different from the lady I married, the one who would spend hours sitting with me discussing our future. She wasn't particularly cruel, but there was a certain coldness about her, as if she had already mentally checked out and was merely doing the part. I suppose that as time went on, I began to trust her when she assured me that everything was okay. In order to avoid coming out as needy or insecure, I quit pressing. In any case, after a few years, we were only getting by. We had gotten into a pattern where we hardly discussed anything important. We seemed more like housemates than husband and wife. She would always dismiss my attempts to discuss other choices, such as adoption or surrogacy, by stating that she didn't want to consider them. I never really believed her when she said, "As long as we're together, I'm happy." She seemed more concerned with persuading herself than I was. Suddenly, she informs me she wants to take a girls' trip. Now, traveling with her buddies was nothing out of the ordinary. She had previously done it a few times, and I had always encouraged her. For a long, she talked about wanting to travel to America with her pals, while we lived in Brighton. We had developed this trust over the years, so I didn't give it a second thought. I therefore made sure she had everything she needed, assisted her with packing, and drove her to the airport. I recall her final words before she departed. She turned to me and said, "Thank you for being so supportive." I found it a little strange that she would say that because I hadn't done anything particularly noteworthy, but she appeared so sincere that I dismissed it as her simply expressing gratitude. I remained up that night to make sure things went well by calling her when she landed. I kept myself occupied around the house, watching TV, keeping an eye on the time, and waited for her to text me to let me know she had landed because her flight was expected to take roughly 9 hours. I called her to check in as soon as I noticed her flight had landed. The phone kept ringing, but no one picked it up. I didn't give it much thought because I assumed she was exhausted and might have gone directly to her hotel and crashed. However, when morning arrived, I still hadn't heard from her. I began to have this nagging concern in the back of my mind. I thought perhaps she was simply busy or her phone was on quiet, so I tried calling again and then texted her a few times. However, I was officially freaking out after a couple more hours of radio silence. In the end, I gave her sister a call to check whether she had heard from her. Nothing. I was really beginning to freak out by this point. In the hopes that something had gone wrong with her phone or that she just hadn't had time to check in, I even went so far as to call her companions, who were meant to be traveling with her. However, they were also perplexed when I called them. They did not accompany her on the trip. Back at home, they were enjoying coffee while seated 2 streets away. It truly hit me at that point. She wasn't traveling with any girls. She didn't have any friends. She hadn't accompanied anyone anywhere. She simply vanished. It seemed as though my stomach had fallen through the floor as I sat there with the phone. I was unable to comprehend it. Why would she tell me such a lie? Why wouldn't she notify me before leaving? I made an effort to persuade myself that it was an error of some sort, such as perhaps she had missed a connecting flight or that she had been unable to contact due to an emergency. But I knew in my heart that she had this planned. Her expressing "thank you for being so supportive," and the entire girls' trip were all components of whatever she had been imagining. I was at a loss for what to do. I couldn't wake up, as if I were living in a nightmare. I had never married a woman like this. I didn't even recognize this person. The coldness, the way she had stopped discussing our future, and those small digs about my appearance and health all began to make sense. I simply hadn't noticed, or perhaps I hadn't wanted to see, that she had been drifting away for a while. I just sat there looking at my phone that night, hoping for a call, a text, anything. However, nothing materialized, and I knew in my heart that it wouldn't. I remember lying there and staring at the ceiling when I woke up the following morning, thinking that it was all just a bad dream. But when she saw that her side of the bed was empty, reality set in. In fact, she had gone. After packing her bags, she disappeared. The promises I had given myself the previous evening, maybe she was late, or perhaps her phone died, were no longer valid. She had clearly planned this and wanted to go. I was completely in denial for the first few days. I would keep ringing her phone in the hopes of hearing her voice and perhaps receiving an explanation. I even left messages. I kept leaving them in the hopes that she would understand, even though I was half the time at a loss for words. However, I only received quiet, which strangely made things worse. It was as though I had been a stranger to her all along and had been left to work things out on my own without knowing what had gone wrong. Her family was initially just as surprised as I was. They hadn't heard from her, and her mother didn't know anything about her plans. In the end, I visited there more times than I could remember in order to speak with her mother and get answers. They must have felt sorry for me. When I couldn't bring myself to cook, her mom would prepare meals for me and occasionally let me stay there. She would sit there while I talked about all the tiny things that didn't make sense, attempting to figure out how my life had suddenly become so complicated. And to be honest, there were times when I was too numb to speak and just sat there in silence. I oscillated between rage, despair, and remorse. What went wrong was a question I kept asking myself. Was there a sign I missed? Was I not paying enough attention to her? On certain days, I would review all of our arguments and conversations in an attempt to determine what caused her to leave. I kept thinking about what I could have done better and how I could have preserved our marriage. It may sound dramatic, but I was completely preoccupied with figuring it out. It seemed as though the solution would somehow make everything better. I hardly slept or ate, and my work also began to suffer. People took notice. When they inquired about my well-being, I would just dismiss it by claiming that I was occupied with personal matters. Admitting the truth, the fact that my wife abandoned me without saying a word, was embarrassing. I eventually told a few close friends, and they tried their best to divert my attention by bringing me out to hang out and encouraging me to move on. However, I would still ponder about her, wondering where she was and why I wasn't enough to keep her around, even when I was with them. The incessant inquiries from strangers, including neighbors, relatives, acquaintances, and even former co-workers who had heard I was married, were among the worst aspects. It was like pulling out a new scab each time somebody asked, "How's married life treating you?" And "How's your wife?" I would just smile and tell them that everything was good since I lacked the courage to tell them she had left. But each time I repeated that untruth, it felt more weighty. The only thing that worked in the end was therapy. Although I had never gone before, I realized I couldn't manage it alone after a few months of hardly functioning. In order to talk to someone who was impartial and unfamiliar with our baggage, I contacted a therapist and began attending once a week. It was beneficial. I would express my rage, betrayal, and the void she had left in my life. I would talk endlessly about the restless evenings and how I would lie awake repeatedly reliving everything. The therapist assisted me in realizing that she would not have remained here if it had been a magical moment. It wasn't my fault. She made the decision to go. It was a difficult pill to take. I had the feeling that I was flawed and had somehow alienated her for a long time. However, I gradually began to see things differently. I chose to overlook her long-standing coldness and distance, assuming that things would improve on their own. I had persuaded myself that I could maintain my composure and that our marriage could be saved by my efforts alone. The realization that it wasn't hurt. As time passed, I began to restore my life in tiny increments. It wasn't until she departed that I realized how much I had lost in our marriage. I had always been the one who tried his hardest to make sure she was content and that our home life was comfortable. But now that I had so much free time, I was at a loss for what to do. I therefore began resuming old pastimes that I had forgotten about. I tried cooking new meals, went to the gym, and started reading literature I had been putting off. Eventually, the work also improved. I was hardly keeping up with my job at first, simply going through the motions. However, when I began to feel more like myself, I worked harder at my job. I felt like I still had control over something in my life, which was one of the few things that gave me a sense of accomplishment. Although I had always been skilled at what I did, I now give it my all, the extra hours, the concentration. I got a promotion as a result of it, something I never would have obtained if I had been moping about my problems. Even yet, there were painful days. A picture, an old movie ticket stub, or other small items that brought back memories I'd tried to forget would occasionally remind me of her. Looking at them, I would question her actions, whether she ever considered me, and whether she ever felt bad about what she had done. But gradually, those times began to disappear. I was able to let go of those memories a little more quickly and move on a little more easily each time. Additionally, I got back in touch with people I hadn't seen much of since getting married. We resumed our activities, including hiking and hitting the golf range, something I hadn't done in years. Having folks by my side who weren't involved in the mess and who could support me in moving on without pulling me back into the agony was a relief. In hindsight, I saw that I had invested much too much of myself in that relationship, in being her spouse. I felt like I had lost a significant portion of who I was when she departed, as if she had taken a piece of me with her. But I was rediscovering who I was, piece by piece. Although it wasn't quick or simple, I was making progress. I was finally able to see someone who wasn't defined by her past actions when I looked in the mirror at the conclusion of that year. I wasn't just the man whose wife had abandoned him. I had rebuilt, I had survived, and I was stronger now. I felt as like I could truly live my life without her shadow looming over me for the first time in years. To be honest, I took pride in that. I believed I had moved on from everything. After all that chaos, life had at last begun to seem normal again, or as close to normal as it could be. My work was going really well, my friends kept me occupied, and I had my routine down pat. Even my daily thoughts about her had stopped. Even while I still occasionally had flashbacks to odd memories, it wasn't as frequent as it used to be, when everything I did was somehow related to her. She was therefore the last person I expected to see standing there when someone knocked on my door one Saturday morning. But there she was with a baby at my doorway. I went cold. It was like witnessing a ghost, and for a moment my brain simply stopped functioning. Though perhaps a touch worn down, she still had her typical appearance. She looked at me as if she genuinely believed that I would be pleased to see her. I thought I was past caring, so yes, that really got to me. As it happens, meeting her again evoked many feelings I had previously suppressed. At first, I remained silent. I just stared as I stood there. As if nothing had happened, she gave me a smile before asking, "May I come in?" The nerve. Really, I mean it. She just shows up here as if I should be welcoming her back with open arms after everything she's done. However, I maintained my composure and told her, "No, you can stay right there," explaining that I didn't want her in my home bringing all that commotion back into the one area I had created for myself. Despite her rather disoriented appearance, she remained in her spot and simply launched into her story. She began by saying, "I know this might be a shock, but I wanted to come back and explain everything." Her expression was hopeful, as though she truly thought I would be willing to listen. I was tempted to just close the door and laugh in her face, but I was too intrigued. I was curious about the reason behind her disappearance and what she had come up with. She continued by explaining that she had erred in leaving and that she had come to the realization that she had lost the greatest thing that had ever occurred to her, not my words, but hers. She claimed to have thought a lot and to have finally realized what was important in life after having this child. After years of ignoring me, it seemed that what mattered most was unexpectedly knocking on my door. "This is our second chance," she remarked, glancing down at the infant. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Our second opportunity? As if this child were some sort of magical reset button that would allow us to resume where we left off. I was furious on the inside, but I attempted to maintain a neutral appearance. She continued by adding that although she had made a grave error, we could now start over, just the three of us. She wanted us to be a family once more. "Why did you leave?" was the final question that had been bothering me ever since she appeared. I tried to speak as steadily as I could, but I wasn't sure how much longer I could contain myself. Now that she was here, I needed to hear it from her since I had tortured myself with all the possibilities for years in an attempt to comprehend. After hesitating and glancing down at her feet as if embarrassed, she finally told me the truth, or at least what I thought it was. She acknowledged that she had left because she wanted a child and had found someone who could provide one for her because I couldn't. She honestly stated it as if it were insignificant, as though she hadn't destroyed my life, and as though I should just nod and take it as gospel. She clarified that although the man she had left didn't stay, she had already given birth and had suddenly come to the realization that she wanted me back. Easy. I paused to think about what she was saying. She was here, confessing that she had left me, fled with a man, had his child, and now expected me to accept it. As if I should simply forget and forgive. "So you left, found someone else, had his baby, and now you think you can come back and pretend like nothing happened?" I asked her. She broke down in tears and apologized, admitting that she had made a big mistake, but I remained unmoved. She kept talking about how she knew she was supposed to be with me and that I was the one she really loved. To be honest, maintaining a straight face was difficult. She sounded so crazy that I was shocked. I could see it clearly on her face that this was desperation, not love. She then attempted to guilt-trip me by talking endlessly about how difficult it had been for her to be a single mother. In fact, she attempted to paint herself as the victim in all of this, acting as though her decisions hadn't brought her to this point. She assured me she was prepared to work things out this time and that she wanted my help. Who does she think I am? Was all I could think about. I listened to it all as I stood there, but I had had enough. I told her right away, "You made your choice a long time ago, and now you have to live with it. There's no second chance here." She appeared astonished, as if she had never even imagined that I would say no, as if she truly believed she could simply saunter back into my life because it would suit her. She became irate just when I thought she would finally understand and depart. She became angry with me, accusing me of selfishness and demanding that I give her another chance to make amends. She said that she could have taken half of everything and divorced me at that time if she had so desired. She even had the audacity to remark that the house should still belong to her. I felt a surge of relief as it seemed like her true self was revealing itself in front of me. At last, I was recognizing her true self. I refrained from arguing with her. I didn't speak louder. "We're done. You wanted a different life, and now you have it. This isn't my responsibility anymore." I simply replied, looking at her, and then I closed the door in her face, interrupting her if she had any more words to say. I was struck with a peculiar sense of serenity as I stood there and heard her muffled screaming coming from the other side of the door. She might shout, cry, knock, or do anything else. However, I knew I would never allow her to return. This stranger who believed she could pick up the pieces when it was convenient for her took the place of the lady I had loved and married. Feeling lighter than I have in years, I moved away from the door and took a seat. I believed that was it after I shut the door behind her. I assumed she would understand and simply walk away. However, no. Rather, she began pounding on the door while shouting various things. The nerve seemed unbelievable to me. She had the gall to stand there and insist that I listen to her while I was in the one place that was truly mine, the only place I had been able to recover from the disaster she had left me in. I initially considered ignoring it and letting her scream till she became weary. But then I started to wonder. I was curious to know what kinds of excuses she would offer this time. I opened the door just enough to let her know I was paying attention, but not enough to let her in. She appeared to be astonished that I hadn't given her the response she desired, as if she had just been slapped across the face. As if we were having a typical argument and not coping with her abandonment, she began a lengthy monologue in which she expressed her willingness to forgive me for closing the door on her and her want to start over. She went on and on about how if we both worked hard, we could work things out. I was unable to contain myself at that moment. I laughed, really laughed, because this woman had more nerve than I had ever seen. When I did that, she appeared enraged, as if I should feel guilty for not paying attention to her. I said to her, "You left. You had your chance, and you threw it all away. I'm not just going to pretend none of that happened because you feel like it." Her face flushed, and she began to talk about how she had been so lost after leaving and how she had discovered her error too late. "You don't understand how hard it was for me," she said. However, I didn't believe it. I informed her that she had taken the decision to leave. She had plotted it, made up a falsehood about it, and then carried it out. Now her remorse meant nothing. That's when she lost it. Her entire tone shifted. She stopped doing the melancholy, repentant act and began to attack me, accusing me of being unjust and lacking the grace to give her another chance. "If I'd wanted to, I could have taken everything from you back then. I could have taken half of everything you own," she bravely said. I simply stood in awe. This woman, who had abandoned me without saying anything, now believed she should be compensated in some way for not attempting to defraud me. As if she was worthy of praise for not being as awful as she could have been. I replied, "So, what am I supposed to be grateful for? Grateful that you only ditched me and didn't take my stuff with you?" Her expression was a mixture of rage and something more, possibly desperation or guilt, as she gazed at me. But to be honest, I didn't give a damn by then. I had just finished. That was where all the years I had spent questioning myself, feeling bad, and wondering if I was somehow to blame for her leaving vanished. I felt as though the burden I had been dragging about had finally been removed when I met her for who she truly was. But she wasn't finished. She began to pace my porch while complaining that I would regret not giving her another chance and that I would never find someone like her. In fact, by refusing to take her back, she attempted to make me feel as though I was the one who was missing out. It was strange. As if I should be pleading with her to stay, here she was, the one who ruined everything we owned. She became even louder and continued to complain about how I had made her leave in the first place when she realized I wasn't going to back down. She said that none of this would have occurred if I had been more understanding about the entire kid situation. Her reasoning seemed to indicate that I had failed her as a husband because I couldn't conceive, which somehow excused her from leaving to have a kid with someone else. The mental acrobatics were amazing. To be honest, I was shocked that she was attempting to blame me for her decisions. I straight up told her, "Look, if you wanted a kid that badly, you could have told me the truth. You didn't have to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine while planning your exit." To that, she had nothing to say. Simply looked at me as if I had hit her. However, I prevented her from speaking. I said, "You made that choice all on your own, and now you've got to live with it. That's not my problem." She made one final attempt, returning to her dejected expression, and urged me to consider the boy and how I was being unjust by ignoring him. She literally exploited the child in her arms to make me feel guilty, as if I were the villain in this situation. However, I wasn't buying into it. I replied, "I don't know that child. I have nothing to do with him. He's not mine, and neither are you." That was the end of it. I could see her coming to terms with it at last. She was aware that I would never change my mind, and that I would never allow her to return to my life. I could see the rage waning and being replaced by something else, either genuine regret or simply exasperation. However, I didn't care. She had attempted to walk all over me and expected me to smile and give her credit, but now she was simply a stranger. For a few more seconds, she stood there as if she was waiting for me to decide to call her back. I didn't say anything else though. When it finally hit her that I meant every word, I just stood there and watched her expression. I closed the door without giving it another glance. I also didn't wait for her to rap on it again this time. In my heart, I knew that I had already made up my mind and that there was no turning back. I don't know, but I felt like I had finally won as I moved away from the door. It was over, even though she had spent so much time hoping to return and use manipulation to get back into my life. I had freedom. Neither for her nor for us was there going to be another chance. She was now only a memory, one that I had at last relegated to the past. I felt like I could breathe again after all those years of suffering and shame. And what do you know? It was pleasant. I experienced an odd sense of tranquility as soon as I shut that door behind her. I no longer felt sad, furious, or even astonished. It was as though all of the effort I had put into her over the years, all of the sorrow, the shame, and the never-ending wondering, had simply disappeared. I was prepared to move on since I had at last found the closure I didn't realize I needed. This time, everything was truly finished, but naturally, it wasn't as tidy a conclusion as I had planned. Her mother texted me a few days later. She apologized, stating she was embarrassed by her daughter's handling of the situation and that she had attempted to reason with her, but clearly it had failed. Her mother was a kind person. She had been quite helpful to me when her daughter departed, and I could see that she was truly distressed by the situation. Although I had nothing against her, I didn't want to be dragged back into that situation. I simply said, "Thanks for checking in response," and didn't say anything further. I wasn't going to waste time justifying my choice, and I wasn't going to offer her mother any more information. She knew it was over because she understood. I learned tidbits over the course of the following few weeks via social media and mutual connections. She had apparently returned to living with her parents, and things weren't going well. The father of the child, the man she had left me for, was not involved at all. He had bailed out. She was left to figure things out on her own because, apparently, he hadn't committed to the long term. Few individuals were eager to help because she had essentially burned every bridge. Her former friends, who had supported me when she first vanished, didn't feel sorry for her. They weren't eager to get drawn back into her drama because they had all moved on. You can't hold them responsible. Her parents weren't too happy either. They didn't have enough money to sustain her and the child. I was aware of this since her father called me shortly after her mother texted me. Curiosity overcame me, and I nearly didn't respond. He was direct but courteous. He mentioned that they were having financial difficulties and suggested that I might be able to assist them in some way. He continued talking about the infant and how difficult things were for them, saying, "We know you cared about her once." I listened courteously, but I couldn't help but giggle a little, not aloud, but you get the idea, when he began to talk endlessly about how his daughter only needed a little help to get back on her feet. I politely informed him that his daughter made her own decisions and that I was neither in a position nor in the right frame of mind to assist. Since he didn't pursue it further, I believe he understood the message. Before I know it, her friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, began contacting me. Some attempted to use the guilt angle, claiming that she was going through a difficult moment and that perhaps I could find it in my heart to give her another chance. She even had the audacity to say that the child needed a father figure and that I shouldn't allow my resentment stand in the way of my efforts to assist him. However, I refused to back down. I refused to allow anyone to make me feel guilty for making my own decision at last. I had given that woman all I had after years of feeling inadequate, and she had tossed it all away. Instead of relying on me to save her, she should at least take responsibility for her decisions. The calls and messages gradually decreased in volume before ceasing completely. Everyone seemed to finally realize that I was serious, that I had moved on, and that I would not get ensnared again. That's when the true calm arrived. For the first time in years, my life felt peaceful and typical. I had my friends, my job, and my routines. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, so it wasn't a fancy, glamorous one, but it was mine. The irony is that I once again began to discover joy in the small things, which I had not given much thought to when I was married. I would read novels I had been meaning to read for years, cook my own food, and take walks. It felt good to be free, and I understood that I could live my life as I pleased without anyone's approval. I wasn't always concerned about other people's happiness or approval, for once. I felt as though I had gradually regained my life. Occasionally, I would stumble into someone who knew us both, and they would inquire, "Hey, what happened to her?" I would respond with a succinct, courteous response and shift the topic. I simply didn't want to keep going back to a chapter that was so obviously over. It wasn't that I was concealing anything. I had finally mastered the skill of leaving her in the past. When I last heard from her, things weren't going well. She was still jumping between her parents' house and friends' sofas after her welcome, and she was having trouble keeping a job. Occasionally, people I don't often communicate with would message me to let me know that she was seeking assistance from anyone who would listen. Some of them even implied that she hoped I would reconsider, that perhaps I would change my mind and end up playing dad to her child. However, that was not going to occur. I had already invested too much time and effort into rebuilding my life to consider taking that route. Her safety net was not going to be me. Just because things didn't go as she had hoped, I wasn't going to be the one to pick up the pieces. Nothing was going to pull me back into that chapter. I was finished. Ultimately, I believe I received the necessary closure. She was now coping with the repercussions of her decisions? And me? It was the first time since the day she departed that I felt completely, truly free. I had had enough of her looming over my life. I was happy that I had moved on. Not in a grand dramatic sense, but simply, contented. And what do you know? That was sufficient. My husband demanded a DNA test moments after I gave birth, but he underestimated what I'd do to protect my daughter and our legacy. The words that just came out of my husband's mouth are far worse than the pain that rips through me like a sharp blade. Adam comes forward, his pricey suit immaculately ironed despite the 12 hours we've spent in this delivery room, while I'm still gasping for air, trembling and drenched in sweat. He says, "I want a DNA test," in a flat, impersonal voice that sounds like he's ordering coffee rather than asking about our baby daughter's paternity. With her hand still holding our baby, my baby, the nurse freezes. The beeping monitors suddenly become too loud and obtrusive, and the room appears to shrink. Dr. Collins's wrinkled face wrinkles in worry as he looks up from his charts. My voice sounds odd and aloof, as if it were someone else's. "Adam, what are you talking about?" I ask. He refuses to look at me. Rather, he looks at our 7-pound daughter. 4 ounces of excellence, with calculating coldness. "You heard me, McKenna. I want proof she's mine." Like poison gas, the accusation lingers in the air. This is the result of 12 years of marriage. To make him feel even a small portion of the agony pulsing through my chest, I want to shout and throw something. Rather, I chuckle. It's an unpleasant sound, bitter and nasty. "Get out." The words make my tongue taste like metal. "Get out before I call security." Dr. Collins begins, "Mrs. Harrison." But Adam interrupts. He takes out his phone and runs his fingers across the screen, saying, "I have every right to be here and every right to request this test. My lawyer says." "Your lawyer? You've been talking to your lawyer while I was in labor?" I blurt out. The only indication that he is still capable of feeling guilt is a faint flush that appears on his neck. I've been preparing for this moment for weeks. The word keeps repeating in my mind. Weeks. My husband was organizing this ambush as I was folding little onesies and choosing nursery colors. I feel as though I've been physically struck by the understanding. Bless the nurse, she puts herself in our way. "Sir, perhaps we should continue this discussion outside." "No." I ignore my aching body's protest and push myself to sit up taller. Let him stay. Let him watch the test. Let him see exactly how wrong he is. Something flickers in Adam's eyes, but his expression remains unchanged. Disappointment? Solace? I can no longer tell. I used to be familiar with all telltale signs and micro-expressions. At what point did my husband lose his identity? "I'll set it up right away," Dr. Collins states in a deliberately casual tone. Though I must say, in my 30 years of practice. "Just do it," instructs Adam. I used to find his nervous habit of straightening his tie charming. The sooner we know the truth, the better. The reality. As though he still knows what that word implies. My girl, our daughter, is sleeping soundly in the bassinet, oblivious to the storm that is building all around her. Her dark hair, like mine, is already beginning to curl, and her little fingers are balled into fists. Even though my hands are shaking, I answer, "Fine," in a calm voice. Do the test. But when it proves what I already know, don't expect forgiveness. His phone buzzes. Adam. He looks at it and his mask briefly comes off. Fear? Feeling guilty? He's on his way to the door before I can comprehend it. He says, "I'll be back tomorrow," without turning around. "My lawyer will contact you about the arrangements." I can breathe again as the door snaps shut behind him. Dr. Collins touches my shoulder tenderly. "McKenna, I'm so sorry." "Don't." I grab my phone, fingers already locating Sam's number. "I'll let my cousin know what to do. He always does. Just get me the paperwork for the test, and Dr. Collins, make sure it's witnessed every step," I respond. His eyes light up with comprehension as he nods. "Of course." I gaze at my daughter once more, committing to memory every exquisite feature of her face. Adam has no idea what he's started, regardless of the game he's playing or the falsehoods he's telling himself. After 3 days in the hospital, Sam feels as though his flat is a haven. As Tara bustles around the kitchen brewing tea, I curl up with Emma on his worn leather couch. My worries are calmed by the familiar smell of coffee grounds and old books, but my hands continue to shake. Saying, "He's changed all the locks," I observe Sam pacing. "Changed the security codes too. 12 years of marriage, and he locks me out like I'm some kind of criminal." With his journalist's notebook already stuffed with scrawled notes, Sam stops pacing. When exactly did things start changing with Adam? Think back carefully. The inquiry is a kind of gut strike. I close my eyes and attempt to remember when my marriage started to go apart. Maybe 4 months ago. He started working late, missing doctor's appointments. Said it was a big merger, the Preston Tech deal. Tara's expression is disturbed as she puts down a mug of chamomile tea. That closed months ago. I give it a quick glance. "How do you know that?" Tara looks at Sam and says, "Because my sister works in their PR department." The deal fell through in March. March, when Adam began bringing pricey new suits home. When the enigmatic business travel started. When he completely stopped caressing me. Sam taps his pen against the notebook and says, "This is what doesn't add up. Why wait until the baby was born to demand a DNA test? Why not do it during pregnancy?" "Because he needed a scene," states Tara in a low voice. "He needed witnesses." It dawns on me like a blast of cold water. He's building a case against me. Emma stirs in my arms, and I instinctively move her blanket. Her little face reminds me of how calm and trustworthy I used to be. Reluctantly, Sam says, "There's something else." I made some calls. Adam's been meeting with divorce attorneys since January. "January," I mumble. Looking down at Emma, I caught myself saying, "When I first told him I was pregnant." When he smiled and hugged me and said everything was perfect. That son of a... Why go through with the pregnancy if he was planning this all along? Because of the Harrison family trust, Tara responds accordingly. "Your father-in-law's will had specific conditions about heirs, didn't it?" Things begin to come together. Even when I say, "The trust only pays out if there are legitimate children," my voice sounds empty. He needed proof the baby wasn't his to invalidate the claim. Sam's phone is buzzing. His face darkens as he looks at it. Adam just posted on LinkedIn. He's accepted a new position at Grant Technologies. Grant. The name makes me think of something. Wait, isn't that the company that tried to buy out Harrison Industries last year? Sam concludes. The same one your father-in-law refused to sell to before he died. We all jump when someone knocks on the door. Glancing through the peephole, Tara takes a rapid step back. "It's Adam." "Don't open it," I say, holding Emma tighter. Adam's words, "McKenna," echo through the door. "I know you're in there." "The DNA test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. My lawyer insists you be present." I take Sam's arm as he approaches the door. "Wait. Let him talk." Adam goes on. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." His voice becoming almost soft. "Just come home. We can work this out." I slowly get to my feet so as not to wake Emma. "Work what out, Adam? The lies? The secret meetings? Or how about the trust fund you're trying to steal?" "Quiet. Then. I don't know what you think you know. I know enough. I no longer tremble when I say this. I know about Grant Technologies. I know about the divorce lawyers. And soon, I'll know everything else too. One more pause. The veneer of tenderness vanishes when he talks again. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. Something hardens inside me as I gaze down at our girl, my daughter. Game on, Adam. He backtracks along the corridor. What's the plan? Asks Sam after locking the door and turning to face me. I take my phone out and go through my old contacts until I locate the one I need. First, we find out everything we can about Grant Technologies. And then, I answer the phone. We call in some favors. Before a recognizable voice responds, the phone rings again. Dr. Collins, I need your help with something. With a somber expression, Dr. Collins slips the phone across his desk. These messages were automatically backed up to the cloud account you shared. I thought you should see them. When I take up the smartphone, my hands shake. 2 days before my labor, the timestamp indicates 3:47 a.m. The message says, everything's arranged. Once the test results come back, she won't have any claim to the trust. Make sure you stick to the plan. Adam has responded. She suspects nothing, just keep your father focused on the merger. Evelyn Grant, says Dr. Collins softly, is Marcus Grant's daughter. I find the name to be bitter. Last year, he attempted to compel my father-in-law to sell his business. With his journalistic instincts taking over, Sam leans forward. The same Marcus Grant who mysteriously acquired 3 board seats after your father-in-law's death. I continue to scan through texts, each one getting worse. Plans. Gatherings? Personal information that makes my stomach turn. They've been seeing each other since January, I murmur. The same month I told him about the baby. Sam asserts, the timing is not coincidental. Grant Technologies announced their hostile takeover bid last week. With Adam's help, they'll have controlling interest in Harrison Industries, unless there's a legitimate heir. The parts fit together perfectly. That's why he needs the DNA test. To show Emma isn't his. It's not about the baby at all. It's about the company. We are interrupted by a knock. Tara enters with a pallid face. Adam's here, with lawyers. Even though my heart is racing, I make myself remain composed. Let them in. Adam walks in with 2 suits that probably cost more than my yearly income, as if he owns the place. He's wearing a tie I've never seen before, and he seems different. Colder, sharper. Dr. Collins begins. This is a private medical facility, but Adam interrupts. The elder attorney says, my client has every right to supervise the paternity test that we're conducting. We have concerns about potential tampering. I chuckle. I'm unable to stop it. Tampering? That's rich, coming from you. Adam clenches his jaw. Careful, McKenna, you're already facing potential fraud charges if... I raise the phone and ask, if what? If these messages somehow become public? The ones showing you and Evelyn planning to steal your father's company? He becomes motionless. I catch a glimpse of genuine terror in his eyes. You had access to my private... I go up and exclaim, your private messages on our shared cloud account, my rage giving me courage. The one you forgot to disconnect when you were so busy planning your little corporate takeover. Adam's visage darkens as the younger attorney murmurs something in his ear. He responds, this changes nothing, but his tone falters. The test will proceed exactly as planned. In a strong tone, Dr. Collins interrupts. Under my supervision, with witnesses present. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the board why you're colluding with Grant Technologies while serving as Harrison Industries CFO. Sam moves forward while Adam's hand fumbles with his phone. I wouldn't, answers Sam with ease. My article about corporate espionage at Grant Technologies goes live in an hour. Fascinating stuff about insider trading and family betrayal. Adam responds, you're bluffing, yet his forehead is dripping with perspiration. I approach while speaking quietly. You want a war, Adam? Fine. But remember, you taught me everything about corporate finance during those late-night strategy sessions. Everything. I stop and show him his most recent communication to Evelyn, which was about love and eternity. Always keep receipts. The elder lawyer clears his throat as they look at one another. Perhaps we should discuss terms. No terms, I respond, observing Adam's flawless exterior crumble. No deals. You wanted to play dirty? Let's play. But remember, you're not just fighting for money anymore. You're fighting for survival. Adam's shoulders are stiff with rage as they depart. Sam lets out a faint whistle. That was something. I sit back down and mutter. Just the beginning, as my legs feel like they might give out. Dr. Collins, how long until the test results? 24 hours, he responds, closely examining me. Are you sure about this? Once we start, I interrupt, I'm sure, in a firm voice. I look at the picture of him and my father-in-law during his medical school graduation that is on his desk. He trusted the wrong people. I won't make the same mistake. Sam gives me a shoulder squeeze. What's next? I take out my phone and navigate to a number I never would have imagined using. Next, we talk to Evelyn Grant. It's time she learned what kind of man she's really dealing with. With its sky-high steel and glass, the Grant Technologies lobby shines with riches and power. Feeling small, I shift Emma's carrier on my arm till I see my reflection in the gleaming marble. Adam got me this suit for board meetings, and it's one of his favorite suits. The armor is what counts, even though it fits differently now. The receptionist says, Miss Grant is in a meeting, without even looking up. I say, tell her McKenna Harrison is here, in a firm voice. With her fiancé's baby. Keys no longer click. Her eyes enlarge when she notices Emma's dark locks, which resemble Adam's a lot. Evelyn Grant and I are seated opposite one another in her corner office 5 minutes later. She's younger than I anticipated, and she's immaculately groomed in a way that befits careful breeding and old money. Her 3-carat princess-cut engagement ring, which is identical to the one in Adam's browsing history, catches the light. She claims, I don't understand, but her hands deceive her by twisting a pen till her knuckles turn white. Adam never mentioned a wife, a baby. Emma fusses, but I handle it with practiced ease. Funny how those details slip his mind when he's planning corporate takeovers. The color fades from her face. You can't prove. With screenshots visible, I move my phone across her desk. Actually, I can. The question is, what will your father say when he learns his perfect future son-in-law is still married? That he's using your relationship to manipulate Harrison Industries stock? Evelyn murmurs. You're lying, but she's already using her immaculately manicured finger to browse through the texts. Her expression hardens with each message. The DNA test is tomorrow, I add, observing her expression. Adam's quite confident about the results, almost like he knows something I don't. She glances up abruptly, terror and recognition flickering in her eyes. My phone is buzzing. My blood runs cold after reading Sam's text. Lab break-in last night. Security video was deleted. He wouldn't, Evelyn murmurs, more to herself than to me. Your father's company stands to gain millions if Harrison Industries falls, I say while leaning forward. And Adam stands to gain everything, unless there's a legitimate heir. She snaps the pen in her hands. Her immaculate desk calendar is marred by ink, which stains both merger dates and wedding venue appointments. Get out, she says tremblingly, before I call security. I slowly stand up, drawing Emma next to me. You know what's funny? I ask in a cool yet incisive tone. He bought me that exact same ring 5 years ago. Promised me the same forever. Even used the same pet names. She shouts, I said get out. I quietly remark, check his phone, and stop at the door. The one he keeps in his gym locker. The one with the real messages. She becomes motionless. How did you, when I say, because I was you once, I make my way to the door and then stop again, saying, young, in love, certain he was different. Oh, and Evelyn, when you confront him, watch his left eyebrow. It twitches when he lies. On her broken face, the elevator doors close. I write to Sam, my hands shaking, it's done. Begin the second phase. He responds right away. Tara's lab contact verified attempts at tampering. The test is being moved to a secure location by Dr. Collins. Another message from an unidentified phone appears. When I open it, my heart stops. Clever girl, writes Adam, you can't remember who taught you how to play chess though. Check your email from Harrison Industries. If you don't leave the board within 1 hour, the creative accounting adjustments you assisted me with last year will be made public. It's your turn. I gaze at the screen, reliving the memories of late hours spent poring over spreadsheets, following Adam's instructions, and signing documents he insisted were standard. The realization of how long he has been planning this makes my stomach turn. Emma's little hand catches my finger as she stirs. I see my own resolve, my father-in-law's strength, and something else in her face that Adam never realized was part of the Harrison family's history. I call Dr. Collins. How quickly can you access the original audit files from last year? In response, already done. And McKenna, I found something interesting in your father-in-law's private records, something about a contingency plan. I smile for the first time in days. Tell me everything. With its clean whiteness and security cameras monitoring our every step, the safe lab feels like a fortress. Adam's attorneys hover close by while Dr. Collins stands at the testing station, his countenance unreadable. Emma ignores the stress that permeates the room as she rests in her carrier. When Dr. Collins says, The results will be available in 30 minutes. All parties will remain present. The door flings itself open. With mascara smearing her cheeks and her flawless poise ruined, Evelyn bursts in. I yell, "You bastard!" Adam takes a step back, his self-assured facade falling off. "Evelyn, this isn't," she spits out, "the gym locker," and throws her phone to him. It strikes the wall with a crash. 3 other women, and you're still married. The attorneys look at each other in horror. Sam stops him as he goes for his briefcase. "Until we hear those results," Sam replies softly. "Nobody leaves?" Adam's uncomfortable gesture of straightening his tie is something I had nearly forgotten. "This is ridiculous." "Whatever McKenna told you?" Evelyn interrupts him, her voice cracking. "She didn't have to tell me anything. Your friend Marcus was quite helpful once I showed him the real numbers behind the Grant Technology merger." Adam's face loses color. "You didn't?" She smiles sharply and bitterly. "Daddy's on his way with the SEC. A message from Tara says, 'Security footage recovered,' and my phone vibrates. A suspect in a lab break-in was identified. I give Dr. Collins the phone. After examining the picture, he turns to face Adam's younger attorney. The man begins to perspire. "Interesting," says Dr. Collins in a cool but acerbic tone. "Very interesting indeed." Adam looks from one of us to the other, calculating. I know the expression he gets when he's going to give up a piece to keep the game going. Adam says abruptly, "The accounting irregularities," in a loud voice. "McKenna signed off on all of them. She's just as culpable." With the exception of the backup plan, I break off, maintaining eye contact. The one my father-in-law left with Dr. Collins before he died. Adam becomes motionless. "What?" "He knew, Adam. About the embezzlement, about Grant Technologies. He documented everything," I add, now speaking steadily. "Including your attempts to access Emma's trust fund before she was even born." Clearing his throat, the senior attorney does so. "Mr. Harrison, perhaps we should—" "Shut up." Adam's calmness totally breaks. His fists are clenched as he rounds on me. "You're bluffing?" "Richard trusted me," Dr. Collins adds in a low, uncompromising voice. "Not just as his doctor but as executor of his estate, including the real will." The device emits a beep. "Test findings are available." Sam stops Adam before he can get the printout. "It's over," declares Sam. "The SEC has everything, fake DNA test orders, embezzlement records, even your deals with Marcus." The hall reverberates with the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps. Adam steps back from the entrance. "McKenna," he adds as his voice mellows into that accustomed cunning tone. "We can still fix this, for Emma's sake." I say, "Don't you dare." With words that burn like acid. "Don't you dare use our daughter as a bargaining chip." The door opens. First to arrive are 2 SEC agents and Marcus Grant. Tara holds out her phone behind them, documenting everything. One agent says, "Adam Harrison, you are being investigated for securities fraud." The events that follow are shown in slow motion. Adam rushes to the emergency room. The younger attorney tries to stop him. Sam shouts something about treachery. Emma is unaware of the mayhem and sleeps soundly in her carrier while it all. Dr. Collins holds out the test findings while touching my arm. "Do you want to know?" I look at the paper and go back to all the times I questioned whether Adam was telling the truth or if I had failed as a mother or a wife. I eventually respond, "No," as I see my spouse get handcuffed by SEC officers. The results don't matter anymore. She's my daughter. That's all I need to know. Marcus Grant walks up, his expression solemn. "Mrs. Harrison, we'll need your testimony tomorrow." I pull Emma in close. "Right now, I'm taking my daughter home." I hear Adam yelling my name as we head out, desperate now, realizing what he's lost. I don't turn around. Not every game is worth winning. Some successes come from letting go rather than seeking retribution. Lawyers, testimony, and struggles for control of Harrison Industries are all part of tomorrow. But I've got all I need in my arms tonight. The boardroom at Harrison Industries is cooler than I recall. After the SEC probe was made public, half of the board left, so perhaps that's why there are empty seats. Perhaps it's the way Sam avoids eye contact with me or the way Dr. Collins is constantly looking at his watch. Marcus Grant spreads paperwork across the gleaming table and declares, "The evidence is conclusive. The results of the DNA test were changed before they were sent to the lab." Adam's new attorney cuts in with a suave voice, "However, Mrs. Harrison was complicit in the financial irregularities, according to my client." Even I sound hollow when I explain, "The signature on these documents was forged. I never—" "Can you demonstrate it?" More documents are slid forward by the attorney. The evidence from these trading records indicates otherwise. During the relevant period, there were significant transfers to your personal account. As I recognize the account numbers, my hands shake. It's our joint account, the one Adam ordered I cease keeping an eye on since he had it handled. This is absurd. Sam stands up suddenly. McKenna allegedly approved these transactions while she was on maternity leave. The lawyer has a shark-like smile. Timestamps indicate otherwise. The doctor clears his throat. Marcus Grant continues. The contingency plan has been compromised, his words tumbling like stones. Last night, someone gained access to Richard Harrison's personal documents. Everything is gone. The space whirls. I feel the earth move beneath me as I hold onto the edge of the table. That's not possible. The security procedures were bypassed, the attorney states in a tone that borders on empathetic. Using your login information and some really intriguing emails regarding offshore accounts. My phone is buzzing. I'm shivering after reading Tara's message. Emergency updates. Company stock is plunging. Reports regarding fraud at Harrison Industries' various levels are currently in the news. The DNA test fiasco is causing a lot of conjecture on social media. I can explain, but Adam's attorney raises his hand. He straightens his papers and stands up saying, "Save it for the SEC hearing." In the meantime, considering the situation, the board has called for an emergency vote of no confidence. You can't. The words grate on my throat. My father-in-law dedicated his life to this business. He had faith in me? Believed you? Adam's voice interrupts, causing me to wince. Despite the ankle monitor indicating his house imprisonment, he stood spotless in the doorway. As if I trusted you not to speak to Evelyn behind my back. You dare not? With ease, he adds. The board needs stability. Someone who can weather this storm with clean hands. Thankfully, I have a deal with the SEC that calls for complete cooperation in return for a lighter sentence. The pieces fit together perfectly. The fake signatures, the corrupted data, and the meticulously crafted paper trail that leads directly to me. You're going to blame me for everything. The realization is bitter. The cover-up, the fraud, all of it. I told Evelyn that. He twitches his left eyebrow. McKenna, you did this to yourself. If you had simply cooperated, did you play along? I get up so fast that my chair falls over. While you embezzled the inheritance of my daughter? Richard built everything, but you ruined it all? His grin turns ruthless. Regarding that, the initial results of the DNA test were really intriguing. There is silence in the room. Security personnel intervene as Sam approaches Adam. I mutter, "You're lying." But suspicion seeps in like poison. All those late hours at work, the enigmatic business trips, the way he avoided talking about nursery colors or baby names. Am I? He asks as he takes out his phone and displays a test result that I have never seen before. Do you want to know how these genetic markers work? Dr. Collins begins to say something, but Adam's attorney interrupts him. In light of the situation, my client is ready to request complete custody. When evaluating a person's suitability for parenthood, the court typically disapproves of fraud and embezzlement. The world becomes extremely small. I saw Emma's face, her dark locks, her little fingers. Her early giggles and nighttime sobs are audible to me. The only thing that has felt genuine since this nightmare started is the weight of her in my arms. Adam whispers, "In an hour, the board will vote. Sign over your shares, resign immediately, and perhaps we can set up supervised visitation." I sway and Sam takes my arm. Don't, McKenna. My vision is blurry, though, and I'm already reaching for the resignation letter. Sometimes giving up isn't the same as surrender. Sometimes the goal is to purchase time so that you can fight in a different way. At midnight, the atmosphere in Dr. Collins' office is different. His father's medical degrees are shadowed, and our footsteps are obscured by the constant buzz of backup generators. While Tara does her magic on the computer, Sam stands guard at the door. I found it, she murmurs. The initial backup of the server. During the purge, Adam's crew didn't notice it. When I put in the flash drive Richard Harrison gave me years ago, his insurance policy, which I never imagined I'd need, my hands trembled. How much time? With her fingers gliding over the keyboard, Tara responds, 10 minutes to decrypt. If the passwords that your father-in-law used are still valid. The door slams open. Adam is standing there with two security officers on either side of him, his ankle monitor glaring accusingly in the dark. He replies, I knew you'd try something desperate, as he enters and adjusts his handcuffs. However, breaking and entering? That will appear awful during the custody hearing. Sam shifts between us. How did you discover? Adam's eyes do not meet his smile. Dr. Collins isn't as devoted as you believed. Everybody has a cost. Like the cost of Evelyn, the words have a harsh taste? Or did she only serve as a stepping stone? For a moment he loses his cool. You're not aware of the stakes. Behind me, Tara whispers. 7 minutes. Adam narrows his gaze. It won't matter what you're attempting to recover. Tomorrow morning, the board will cast its vote. Your resignation has already been handled. As I watch the progress meter creep, I remark, resignations are a funny thing. If they were signed under duress or if the person requesting them is engaging in fraud, they are not valid. He chuckles, but there's a hint of doubt. There is nothing you can prove. 15 minutes, Tara replies. Adam gives the guards a signal. Stop it, right now? I move forward and play my final card, saying, wait. The actual DNA is the outcome. Let me see them. We have experienced this. Either show me, or I send the SEC everything we discover, including every email, transaction, and encounter with Marcus Grant. He twitches his left eyebrow. You're playing a bluff. 3 minutes, declares Tara. The security personnel approach the PC. Sam stiffens, prepared to step in. Adam's words, she's yours, stop everyone cold. The actual DNA test demonstrates that she is yours. I needed leverage, so I changed the outcomes. I just sense clarity, even though the admission should be painful. In any case, you never desired her, did you? She was merely another resource to manage. For 2 minutes, Tara replies. At last, Adam's facade breaks. Do you believe this has to do with a baby? Power is at issue here. Command. All of the promises Richard made to me when he appointed me CFO, I whisper. He promised you a legacy, not a kingdom to steal. A minute. Adam makes a foray towards the computer. Tara shields the screen and Sam stops him. Something, a phone I've never seen before, drops out of Adam's pocket amid the confusion. I pick it up and immediately see the texts. Plans to dismantle Harrison Industries for parts, discussions with Marcus Grant, and something else, Dr. Collins' correspondence. Tara declares gleefully, it's done. Everything has been decoded. Adam becomes motionless. You should avoid opening that file. However, I already am. The room is filled with the voice of Richard Harrison, who made a video confession just days before he passed away. He gives names, explains plans, then offers a last surprise. Now that I finally understand, I tell Adam, the company was never yours to steal. Before he passed away, Richard made a revision to his will. He gave Emma the reins of power. Adam says, trembling, impossible. She was not born at all. I show him the will's date. Adam, he was aware. Almost everything, including the fraud, the affairs, and the agreements with Grant Technologies. You've been playing the exact game he anticipated the entire time. In the distance, police sirens blare. Adam's expression changes to one of rage. You believe you've triumphed? The board, the proof, and your signed confession are still with me. Check your phone, Sam murmurs. The one you just dropped, the real one. Evelyn's father pulling all support, Marcus Grant cutting agreements to save himself, the SEC renewing their investigation, and Dr. Collins sent one last message. I kept my promise, Richard. Adam's eyes widened as the messages poured in. The heritage of your granddaughter is secure. Adam collapses, his empire of lies crumbling around him, as the police storm in. However, I'm already leaving while seeing Emma sleeping soundly at home. Some victories are about defending what's most important, not about winning. The turmoil from last night can still be heard in the Harrison Industries boardroom. The doorway is crossed by police tape, and the conference table where Adam's empire eventually fell apart is covered in evidence markers. Richard Harrison's personal files are in the leather portfolio that Dr. Collins hands me. He murmurs softly, when the time was right, he wanted you to have these. I discover a note inside, buried beneath years' worth of financial documents and business plans. Richard's decisive handwriting is still visible despite the paper's age and the ink's fading. My beloved McKenna, you'll know by now why I picked you to guard Emma's inheritance, not because you're Adam's wife, but because you saw what he couldn't. Stock prices and merger agreements don't measure legacy. It is ingrained in choices, in choosing to defend instead of destroy. Emma is fussy in her job. I reposition her blanket and notice my image in the shadowed windows. Somehow I appear different, stronger, perhaps, or simply more certain. Sam shows up at the door. The SEC wants to take another look at the video testimony. Evelyn Grant is also present. When Evelyn walks in, I anticipate fury, but all I see in her eyes is tiredness. According to her, the board approved the dissolution of the merger attempt. Daddy is resigning? She twists her now ringless fingers and rambles. The scandal. I tell her, I never wanted this. Most of it is true. Neither did I. Her expression softens as she turns to face Emma. He also promised me children, you know. A future in which I genuinely had faith. I respond, I know, since I did the same once. The doctor clears his throat. The new members of the board are ready. They will require guidance about the company's future. Richard's letter about choices and legacies comes to mind. Inform them that we are reorganizing, beginning with the charitable foundation. Funding for programs that assist single parents should be doubled. From where she sits at the computer, already working on the press release, Tara smiles. Our attention is drawn to a disturbance outside. I watch through the glass walls as federal officers carry Adam away, his flawless suit rumpled and his confidence mask finally shattered. He looks at me and begins to say something, but I look away. There are some discussions that are not worthwhile. Dr. Collins pulls out another envelope and says, there's something else. Regarding Emma's trust, your father-in-law left detailed instructions. It's a challenge, not simply money. Projects for community investment must equal every dollar. Finally comprehending, I chuckle. He ensured that the legacy would not be taken. It must be earned. Speaking of income, Sam adds, corporate corruption and the price of truth, an investigative piece that recently went live, although I believe karma in the boardroom, sounded more appealing. I decide, no more karma, as I watch Emma fall asleep. No more retaliation either. Just moving forward. Dr. Collins' eyebrow goes up. And Adam? After closing Richard's portfolio, I said, we face justice through proper channels. I've had enough of his games. Evelyn gets up to go, but stops at the door. She nods to Emma and says, for what it's worth, I think Richard chose well, not just for the company, but for her. When she leaves, I stroll over to Richard's former workplace. His nameplate, which will shortly read Harrison Industries Trust Management, is still displayed on the door. His presence permeates every thoughtfully selected detail inside. One final message, dated the day of his death, is slipped inside his desk calendar. Remember, knowing when to stop is more powerful than knowing when to fight. Fortunately, none of her father's calculations are used when Emma wakes up and demands attention. I pick her up and inhale that wonderful infant smell. Are you prepared to return home? From the doorway, Sam asks. As I grab our belongings, I correct him, not home. Going forward. Reporters wait outside with inquiries concerning scandal and atonement. Lawyers, reorganization plans, and countless decisions regarding Emma's future await us tomorrow. But now, in this silent triumph, I realize what Richard has known all along. Sometimes the best form of retaliation isn't demolishing what other people have created, but rather creating something better out of the ashes they left behind. I skipped the family cruise. After being asked to buy my own ticket, now they're upset they can't reach me. For the holidays, my folks wanted to take a cruise. My brother, 28M, his girlfriend, 26F, my boyfriend, 27M, and I, 25F, were invited. The golden child has always been my brother, who we'll call James. Some background. When James was caught selling pills in high school, it was written off as just a phase. In the meantime, my parents threatened to expel me after I was found smoking marijuana. Despite dropping out of college 3 times and losing his scholarship, James is still seen as ideal. I was told I didn't put in enough effort when I graduated a semester late. I dwell in my home state, close to my parents, while James continues to reside in the place where he went to college. He doesn't go to school or work. My parents often purchase tickets for him to travel to see them, but they won't purchase a ticket for me to travel to see him or anywhere else. He recently purchased a $2,000 dog with the money they provide him for rent and other expenses. My parents promptly removed me from their insurance when I was 22 and got my first big job since I could receive benefits. James, meanwhile, continued to be covered by their insurance until his 26th birthday. I returned to living with my parents in order to save money after being laid off last year. My parents, who had never talked about it previously, insisted that I pay $10,000 in back rent when I started a new job. I recently moved in with my boyfriend after paying it off in the end. I've always had this pattern in my life. James gets everything while I have to put in a lot of effort. Let's go on the cruise now. My parents ordered tickets for James, his fiancée, and themselves after announcing their plans. They advised me to purchase my own ticket because I work at a well-paying job. Being the only one forced to purchase my own ticket infuriated me, so I told them it wasn't fair. Due to holiday arrangements with his family, my partner was unable to attend. My parents said, Green doesn't look good on you, and accused me of being pampered. It's a phrase I'm so sick of hearing. It's not like you need a nice room because we'll be outside most of the time anyway, they continued. Perhaps that is the case, then why did James receive a good room? I informed them I was leaving because I had had enough. I may be the jerk here, though, because I gave them the impression that I was still going for months. They instructed me to arrive at their house by 8 a.m., the night before they were scheduled to depart so that we could begin the drive to the port at 8:30. They began messaging me the following morning, inquiring about my whereabouts. I responded to your SMS by saying, I'll be at my boyfriend's Thanksgiving instead, since you didn't want to make the effort to have me join you. Enjoy your vacation with your beloved youngster. I then turned off the chat. I discussed this with a few friends. Some people thought it was rude to abruptly cancel, while others felt I should have accepted the situation and gone anyway, since I would have likely enjoyed myself once I was there. Now that they've been on the cruise for a few days, I'm beginning to feel bad about the way I handled things. It's not like I couldn't afford the ticket, so I'm sure I would have enjoyed myself. Additionally, I could have communicated my point more effectively. However, I'm also rather tired of their treating me in this manner. Is it my fault for calling off our family's vacation? Update 1. Of course, I'll start by paying the $10,000 in overdue rent. I didn't think the number was the problem. It's obviously a little higher than I would have preferred, but not unreasonably so given how long I stayed there. It's not as though I could have gotten a better deal on renting my own house. I would have spent all of my cash and most likely accrued debt while I was unemployed if I hadn't moved in with them. I worked as a server and did some freelance writing while I was searching for a new career in my profession, so I was helping to pay for groceries but not electricity or rent. As a result, when I found work again, I could see why my parents needed financial assistance. I only wish that expectation had been clearer from the start rather than being thrown at me as a surprise. I understood that having me stay for so long, especially while they were renovating their house, was inconvenient for them, so I paid for it. Pushing back didn't seem worthwhile. It just felt easier to pay the money, and I know that if I had refused, it would have become a major problem. Yes, it's likely that I need to work on my pushover tendencies. Fortunately, I work as a technical writer, which pays well, so after I started my new job, I was able to save money for a move out and pay my parents back in approximately 6 months. For those who are interested in the chronology, in January of last year, I lost my job. I moved in with my parents after using my money to cover my rent until my lease expired in June. From June of last year until September of this year, when I moved in with my partner, I lived with them. My parents informed me that they wanted back rent and future rent till I moved out when I started my present job in May. They claimed it was to encourage me to stand again. Technically, not all of it was back rent, but I used the term to be succinct. The entire sum came to $10,000 by the time I moved out, and I had already settled the majority of it. A few responses mentioned taking my parents to court, but I don't think that's worth it or even feasible. I didn't protest paying it, and we never had a formal contract. That wasn't something I wanted them to remember. Any legal matter would only rehash everything, and I would prefer not to do that. At least it's done now that it's paid. I'm aware that I should probably resist their demands more in the future. Since everything has been like way my entire life, it's just challenging. I've learned from my experiences that if I refuse, they would perceive me as unappreciative. I strive for perfection because all I want is for them to care for and support me in the same way that they do James. The worst thing is that I was quite close to James as a child. We spent a lot of time together as children. I was taught how to ride a bike by him. When I was being bullied, he defended me. He just never learned how to be independent, and I don't think that makes him a horrible person at all. He doesn't understand why I have problems with our parents, which has caused tension in our relationship. I miss playing RuneScape with my brother late at night. Since he has consistently received additional assistance, I'm rather certain he fully accepts the notion that he needs it. He has no idea what else to do or anticipate. He still treats me nicely, at least, but he doesn't recognize the difference in our treatment. In essence, he wants me to accept it and become a member of the family. Unfortunately, once it came to problems with our parents, all of his support simply vanished. One day, I hope, James will gain some distance from them so we can get back in touch. I do not wish for our relationship to continue to suffer as a result of this. I apologize for being so sentimental, but let's get back to the comments. I also saw that some people wanted to know why I hadn't informed them sooner that I was canceling. They would have spent those months attempting to get me to go and humiliating me if I persisted in refusing, but I see that was a petty move on my behalf. It looked like a lot of work, and my method was much simpler. I did receive some joy from it, albeit perhaps this is embarrassing of me. Treating them the same way they treat me was satisfying. Furthermore, It didn't really affect their trip. They traveled nonetheless, only without me. The idea of having little to no contact with my family was mentioned in a lot of the comments, and I've been thinking about it ever since. My boyfriend, who has witnessed my parents' behavior firsthand, supports this choice. If I tell my pals the whole tale, I'm sure they'll be on board as well. I've tried to avoid discussing the family dynamic with my friends since I find it depressing, and most of them have never met my parents. Additionally, I didn't want to come across as constantly complaining. They had only heard a few minor grievances here and there before. Having said that, the following is what has transpired since my last post. Late on Wednesday night, my boyfriend and I arrived at the cottage. His mother adored the bouquet I sent her, which included her favorite flowers. Before going to bed, we chatted with his family and had a small glass of wine. They didn't seem to mind that I wasn't as jovial as usual because I was still a little unsure about my choices. I promised myself that evening that I would ignore my personal family problems and concentrate solely on enjoying the trip with my boyfriend's family, who have always been so kind to me. We got up early on Thursday and assisted his mother in preparing various meals and arranging the table. After that, I played cornhole with his cousins, but we lost because I'm not that athletic. The actual Thanksgiving lunch was excellent. His mother cooks really well. I felt much better about choosing to spend the holidays with them because everyone was so kind to me and made me feel like a member of the family. His mother even told me at the conclusion of the evening that she hopes I will be able to live with the family someday, even though she knows it is ultimately up to my partner. We hugged after I assured her that I would be honored if that occurred. I sincerely hope it will. I want to be with my partner for the rest of my life since I love him so much. His family is an amazing benefit as well. Throughout Thanksgiving and the remainder of the weekend, I had a great time. We watched movies, played board games, hung out by the bonfire, and went on some amazing hikes. My partner also took care of his young nephew for a while. I definitely got a little baby fever from watching them play with Legos together, but I don't want to act on it for at least a few years. I've already missed everything since we returned yesterday afternoon. There was no family drama, which made my own family appear even more dysfunctional, and it was truly a blast. I feel like I'm babbling a little bit now. In all honesty, I probably have been, but I'm just so happy to convey how much fun I had during the holiday and how I made the correct choice. Regretfully, there are some negative aspects to this upgrade. I hope it is. Last night, my parents contacted me to express their continued dissatisfaction with my decision. I suppose they weren't sufficiently relaxed by the sea air and free beverages. Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places, my dad wrote in a passive-aggressive text message that included cruise photos. It seems like you guys had a good time, I answered, sending back a photo from my trip with my boyfriend's family. We did too. My mother then called to express her sadness that I had spoiled their memories and missed out on a wonderful family holiday because of a small grievance against my brother. I informed her that their unjust preferential treatment of us was my problem, not James's. Since James needs help while he figures out his direction in life, and I've always been considerably more independent, my mother felt that I was being unjust by drawing comparisons between our circumstances. They never really let me rely on them, so that's the only reason that's true, I informed her. She stated that I should either grow up and be thankful for everything they have done or leave them alone for good and shatter their hearts all at once rather than piece by piece. She also said she would not apologize for raising a self-sufficient daughter. Even though they appeared to be doing just well without me based on the pictures my dad provided and what they shared on social media, she accused me of being heartless for dangling the hope of a wonderful holiday only to snatch it away at the last second. By this time, I was furious and gave her several examples of how they put James first in the hopes that she would finally realize how this upbringing has impacted me. Considering that I am childless and have never had to make difficult choices, my mother thought I had a lot of nerve to scrutinize their parenting. I guess I'll just leave you guys alone like you want since I'll never be enough for this family anyway, I remarked, tired of the conversation. As usual, my boyfriend provided me with a lot of support even though I ended the call crying. To lift my spirits, we watched The Hunger Games and ate ice cream for the remainder of the evening. I adore the series and can't wait for the new film to be out. After everything, it seemed weird to return to work today and pretend nothing had happened. However, I believe it served as a useful diversion as well. With the exception of last night's events, I actually returned from my vacation feeling more rested than I probably would have after the cruise because I had chosen my boyfriend's plans rather than my family's. Although my parents haven't responded to me yet, I suspect they're bluffing. They'll definitely get in touch if they need something, or they'll likely attempt to make things work out before Christmas, so they won't have to tell our wider family about it. I'm still not sure if I'll be amenable to making amends. Despite the fact that I have done so much for them, I know I deserve better than to be viewed as an afterthought and a burden. I'm fed up with trying to meet their standards, and I don't think their behavior will ever change. However, it's so hard to completely leave them because they are my family. All I want is to experience the same level of acceptance and affection from my own family as I do from my boyfriends. Why do they find it so difficult to treat me as though I'm important? Additionally, I'm afraid that if I don't be kind to them, they'll fabricate a tale to blame me, and my extended family will also be upset with me. Although my parents have a significant impact on everyone's viewpoints, there are some members of my family who I like. I'm not sure if it would be better to accept the loss and move on from a dynamic where I'm obviously not valued, or if it would be worth putting up with them in order to maintain some ties to my family. At the very least, I want to keep my brother, but perhaps I'm clinging to the past, and that James is no longer there. I hope that isn't the case. My parents have brainwashed him into believing they are infallible, so I'm not sure how to approach him. I doubt that I will ever be able to fully regain my brother. Right now, I have a lot on my mind, and I'm not sure if I'm prepared to make such a significant life change. I do think that if I at least kept my distance from them, or perhaps stopped talking to them completely, I would feel a lot lighter and more liberated. Cousin called me at midnight to babysit her grown kids. I said no, chaos followed, and now I have a restraining order. Even though I hardly knew her or her adult children, I declined my cousin's midnight call asking me to watch them. I have my own life, work full-time, and am 28. Being 28, you know. Naturally, that is irrelevant because it seems that I should always schedule time for my family. I know maybe 7% of them by name and 15% of them by face, but let's overlook that. I'm sorry, but someone is sure to get bogged down in the details with the 400 Mildreds, 250 Lindas, and 800 Stephanies, Chelseas, and Janets I see once every full planetary alignment. Naturally, when my parents, grandma, and siblings are all free, I make time for them. Being the youngest of 3, I work at the most forgiving job, even though it's not that bad. I also schedule time for other people I see on a regular basis. Well, let's get back to the funeral. Throughout the pre-ceremonial event, I kept getting the question, "Do you remember me?" And, "Are you aware of my identity?" To prevent any discomfort, I responded yes, yes, and yes. It's been a long time. One of my cousins, of whom I have no recollection but who evidently speaks to my mom on a daily basis, approached me during that time and introduced me to her children. We said hello to each other. According to their mother, they had been eagerly awaiting my arrival and appeared ecstatic to meet me. What the expletive? Was the first thing that came to me, but I ignored it because I wasn't in the right frame of mind. My cousin informed me that her children were in my state, around 40 minutes away from my home, and that they were roughly my age. I thought, oh, that's awesome, but I didn't give a damn. She said she would discuss it with my mother and proposed a little gathering later this year. Yes, all right. I took it as a cool, I don't have to worry about it, and went on, even though I'm not 14 anymore and don't need permission to do anything. Let's travel ahead to roughly 45 minutes. I receive a call at around midnight from a number located in the city where the majority of my family resides. Furthermore, the location is quite specific, too specific to be spam. I panicked, of course. My late grandfather was only a few years older than my grandma, who was down there at the time. Call me suspicious. I picked up the phone. Hi, name. It's your relative. How are you? My thoughts are, who the expletive? However, I answered, hey, what's up, is everything all right? Yes, she responded, as if perplexed by my inquiry. Everything is all right, just checking in to see when you're free to get lunch this weekend with her children's names. I felt like that meme with all the mathematics going about after I eventually figured out who this was. This woman couldn't have contacted me at almost midnight to arrange her expletive playdate. I'm sorry, what? I said. Remember at the funeral? She said. We discussed getting together later with you and kids' names. In addition to son's name, applying to university, daughter's name is transferring there for her junior year. I was thinking that we could meet after their Saturday morning tour, and you could take them out to lunch. Alcohol is just nowhere, son's name is just 18. Hold on. What? She claimed they were about my age, but her son is incapable of drinking, as I clearly recall. She then begins to babble about how her daughter, who is 22 years old and doesn't know what moderation means, isn't permitted to drink unless she or her husband are around. What on earth would a 28 almost 29-year-old have to discuss with an 18 and 22-year-old? Perhaps I'm the only one who thinks this. Don't use drugs, concentrate on your studies, and don't get anyone pregnant. What's the topic of discussion? In addition, I don't even know these individuals. I was gasping and squawking on the phone before I even realized it. It was not appreciated by my cousin. I muttered, "Yeah, I don't think so," but I was too busy laughing to hear what she was saying. "I don't get off until around 8 p.m. on Saturdays since I work a double shift." "Well, first of all, I don't know what's so funny about what I said," she shot back. "Additionally, you may simply have a wonderful supper or do something else." 8 p.m. It's not that late. I had lost all patience by now. "Ma'am, this isn't Star Trek, and I work about 40 minutes away. After an 11-hour shift, I'm not in the mood to babysit, and I won't be arriving home until about 9 o'clock. Although this is a college town, I can suggest a few places for you guys to check out on your own. There aren't many locations that don't serve alcohol. They do have other drinks, after all," she said. "Pardon me. I am aware that your mother did not teach you to treat others rudely, especially your relatives. I don't know you, dude. You're calling me at the most inconvenient time to arrange a get-together with your children, who are not my age, and I have no idea who you are. You're all young adults, girl. I cover the cost of my own health insurance. We are not alike. Do not call me again, please." After hanging up, I had a brief argument with my fiancé, who had been awakened by this absurdity. I'm not going to hear the end of this during regular waking hours, of course. In a subtle way, I hoped she would wake up and complain about me so my mother would scold her for phoning us at such an inappropriate hour. However, I am aware that my mother will point out that I should have been a bit more polite. To be honest, I believe I did okay by refraining from using profanity during the discussion. Perhaps I'm simply talking about my zero expletive tolerance. Update. It turns out that by making a joke about my cousin calling my mom to complain about me, I jinxed myself because she actually did just that. She awoke my hard-working, impoverished mother to spy on me. In my opinion, my mother is a complete gem, yet I have witnessed her attack others like a rogue chainsaw. Her charming fairy act wasn't a lie to me. Tinkerbell has a tendency to be petty. She mentioned that she said some words, which is her way of stating that she cursed, but she didn't tell me exactly what she said. After saying one sentence, she hung up. My mom contacted my cousin back to get the whole story when she had gotten up and had her coffee. She gave me a call at that point. My mom questioned me, "Did you make a Star Trek reference during a conversation with your cousin as to why you wouldn't be able to have dinner with her kids?" As soon as I answered, and I could tell she was struggling to maintain her composure while being a mother. Indeed, I did. Since I only have a car and still need to pay gas, she was giving the impression that I had a transporter in my pocket. Over the phone, I could definitely hear her trying not to laugh. "Honey, I don't think she gets your sense of humor." Well, that should come as no surprise given that we don't even know one another. At that moment, my mom burst out laughing so loudly that my dad could hear it from a different room. Through the speaker, I could hear him laughing. My mother didn't have the strength to tell me to apologize just yet, even though I know she wanted to. She advised me to wait till my cousin had calmed down a bit, but she would keep me updated. I was traveling to work at the time of this call, which is what nearly caused me to crash my car. "I understand that what your cousin did was absurd, but do you think it was appropriate to laugh at her?" my mother asked. I won't reveal precisely what Mom told me next, but it seems that in her initial outburst, she had come up with a rather colorful moniker for my cousin. The N-word appeared in the name, but don't worry, we're all black. I had never heard my mother use that word in my entire life. She was so furious that I'm shocked she was able to contact this woman back, much less engage in a normal discussion. Therefore, I believe it should be clear that nobody in this household should be concerned about my urinating. I'm a bundle of kittens in comparison to my mom when she's exhausted. Second update. From now on, I shall refer to her as this raccoon dog since I have officially had enough of her. Her name is in my contacts as well. Get ready to be as mistaken as I was if you believed that the entitlement and rudeness couldn't get much worse. I suppose I'm simply a expletive fool if you did believe that things might get worse. I decided to work on a new beer recipe I had developed since I had today off. So there I was, with my brew pot, in the kitchen. To put things in perspective, the first step in making beer at home is to prepare the wort, which is essentially your sugar water. In order to add malt extracts, the grains are first boiled in a kettle or stock pot, and then the heat is turned off. Before boiling the liquid once more, you must stir until the extracts dissolve. Hops are then added, adding a range of tastes and bitterness. In instance, I utilize several components that I produce myself during the initial boil, making my brews a little more complex. Because these materials take a long time to mature, I make sure not to squander any of it. Later on, this will be significant. The raccoon dog from hell called me while I was relaxing and doing my thing. My curiosity overcame me, and I answered after considering leaving her on voicemail. "Hey, Hi, this is RD. Oh, hello. What is going on? I wanted to express my regret for the other day. The time didn't even cross my mind. Usually, I stay up quite late talking to someone. Unable to relate. Yes, I do feel that. No worries. Internally fuming. So pay attention. I was hoping you would think twice about hanging out with blah and blah, even though I know we had a rough start. I know you were worried since you don't know each other, and they don't know anyone in that town. I understand. All I want is for them to be with someone they feel at ease with. Now, as I've stated in other remarks, I believe it to be very reasonable. She is their mother after all, and is presumably merely attempting to ensure that college is enjoyable for them. Personally, I detested attending classes and spending so much time with strangers. I took online classes and stayed at home since I didn't like the idea of mingling at college. I told her that I understood exactly where she was coming from. I appreciate your understanding. Now, your mother informed me that due to your job, these things must be planned for you in advance, RD said. Since we'll all be getting together anyhow, I was thinking about Thanksgiving or Christmas. Yes, of course, I don't see why not, as we'll all be at the same location anyhow. Excellent, many thanks. They will be quite thrilled. Fantastic. With a gentle click-clack, I put the brew kettle back on the hot stove and said, "Sounds good. Are you preparing a meal?" "Yes." "You can cook, don't you?" "What are you producing?" "I am brewing wort for a new recipe that I am experimenting with." "Wort? What is that?" "Oh, it's beer sugar base." "I apologize, did you mention beer?" "Yes." "Are you brewing beer?" "Yes." "Oh, huh. Is your mom aware of what you're doing?" "I suppose so, since she knows I can make it." Awkward quiet. "I said beer, not cocaine, didn't you hear me?" "Are you also able to make that?" "No, you're acting like I'm breaking something," so I asked. "Well, I'm just worried about the potential impact that could have on the children. Perhaps don't bring that up when you're hanging around. I am already aware that certain conventional families may not find my interests and employment choice suitable. But I would be dishonest if I claimed that her reaction and treatment of something I'm really passionate about didn't make me feel a bit upset. Only because I was going to see them over the holidays, and since I don't really discuss my passions in front of my family out of respect and to prevent any drama, did I not decline the hangout and end the call at that moment. Therefore, it wouldn't have been a problem. I simply agreed and rolled my eyes. Fantastic? All right, the final item. I am aware that the neighborhood has a large number of affordable apartments and student housing. Therefore, I wanted to know which ones we ought to investigate that would be both close to the school and you. This is the point at which reality set in. To be honest, I smiled a little. Well, the rates are fairly reasonable for a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the school. That's amazing, you two might live next door. Yes, regarding that. Actually, before the year ends, we will be relocating to the city where I work, which is over 40 minutes away, so we won't be in the area. Oh, hold on. I'm not really paying attention. Are you stating that you will not be able to visit them? Put Britney Spears' WTF expression here. Actually, no, not at all. We are moving closer to our employment so that we won't have to drive as far, which is the main goal. But you do it all the time, so I just don't understand why you couldn't go see them once or twice a week. Well, that would be really inconvenient for me. That doesn't seem very likely to me. Is spending a couple hours with your family inconvenient? Do you not make the extra drive to your parents' city? Yeah, but traffic is typically the cause. So, you go see them despite though you'll be even farther away when you move. I don't understand why it's so inconvenient for you to drive halfway to see your relatives, especially on days like today when you should be spending time with your family instead of creating booze. Simply put, I think your priorities are a little out of order. For the remainder of this talk, my brain decided that civility was unnecessary and pushed it into a locked closet, despite the fact that I have painfully and deliberately chosen my words throughout all of our conversations. I'm sorry, did you really just compare the level of importance between your kids, who I have said exactly 0 words to in my entire 28 years of life, to my parents? I exploded. All right, honey, let me start by saying that I have no idea to whom you are speaking. Once more, who the explicit are you? Again, what do I owe you? What time or portion of my day do you deserve to reclaim? Why have you returned to my life? If we hadn't crossed paths again, what would I miss? Oh, nothing, since I don't know you explicitly. Furthermore, I don't have an attic, so I don't care if you choose to move in. Years before I can even recall your explicit name, I'm going to visit my folks and deliver them all the homemade alcohol I desire. And explicit you for diverting my attention as my explicit ward is now ruined due to my kettle boiling over. I nearly lost it when I heard my fiancé laugh out loud in the adjacent room, but that was in the heat of the moment. I sounded like an irate Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, he said later. Since I was so focused on getting the sticky mess of my damaged mixture off my stove and floor before my cat could get to it, I honestly can't recall if she said anything else after that. I hung up after saying an irate "see you on Thanksgiving," which was all I could manage in my annoyance. Although I haven't heard from anybody else since, I'm quite certain that nobody will have the audacity to bring it up given how out of character that blow-up was for me. I don't get angry very often, so when I do, my parents usually just make sure I'm all right and prevent anyone from bringing it up later. I have to give my fiancé credit for making me laugh so fast at the absurd noise I made when I saw the pot boil over when he came to assist me clean up the mess. I asked him in jest if he believed I would be punished for that outburst. He claimed that he believes I frightened her enough to make her temporarily retreat to her trash den. Third update. I have had nothing to do at all for the first time since Thanksgiving. We appreciate everyone who took the time out of their day to read this, as it will be the final installment of this chaotic roller coaster. I'm glad I could keep you entertained. I know that most of you were anticipating some kind of media circus monstrosity family meal, but this is the moment you've all been waiting for. To be honest, so did I. However, this year, the goddess of chaos chose to be my best friend and made the holiday absolutely ideal for me. My family's Thanksgiving was cancelled. My fiancé and I had to work on Black Friday, my grandma stayed at home in remembrance of my grandfather, and my parents traveled to see my brother. Thus, we peacefully spent Thanksgiving at home. We watched a marathon of horror films while snuggled in our pajamas and enjoying a delectable supper and fantastic drinks that I had made. I was swooning over it like a fat cat in a tuna factory, and it was flawless. Then my phone rang, though. I choose to disregard the number because I didn't recognize it. They left a voicemail, but they could wait until tomorrow because I was on vacation for the holidays. Another call was received a few minutes later. The same figure. Then another. And yet another. And yet another. I was on the verge of enclosing my phone in a salt barrier in the hopes that it would deter this stalker. As the logical genius that he is, my fiancé recommended that I listen to the message, which I had entirely forgotten about. I turned it on so we could hear it. This is your landlord, SFM. Since the workplace is plainly closed, I'm using my personal phone. I apologize for disturbing your vacation, but I must have a call from you as soon as possible. You're probably wondering where the raccoon dog comes in, but I phoned her back in a panic because I had missed around 8 calls from this woman by this time. Oh baby, it's going to feel like Christmas. I don't have the entire discussion committed to memory, but I know I can get it very near. I remember what I said. And my landlord wasn't very professional throughout this call, don't judge, but I would have been furious too. I gave my landlord a call. Hey, she sounded as though she had discovered an entire turkey in the toilet. Hey, I'm so sorry, I didn't know this was you and I began. No, honey, I understand. Like everyone else, you were having a great time on vacation. Please don't even think about it. She cut me off. Here's a nervous laugh. So, what is going on? What's happening? Are you familiar with a woman named Raccoon Dog? She inquired. Her name was still a mystery to me, so I said, not off the top of my head, no. All right, so she's been berating our courteous cop for the last hour and a half and she knows you. She claimed that after you invited her children over, she is unable to contact you. Make sure that explicit didn't interpret my "see you on Thanksgiving" remark from our most recent phone conversation as an invitation to visit my house. I'm still having trouble connecting the dots at this point because I haven't spoken to this person in a month, and I was freaking out like a squirrel attempting to cross a busy street because my first thought when my landlord called me on her cell phone on Thanksgiving was eviction notice. I clarified that neither of us had invited anyone, thus I had no idea who this could be. See, that's what I thought, because you guys don't ever really have nobody around like that anyway, my landlord said, going into full nail salon black lady mode. Given that my fiancé and I are antisocial recluses, may my landlord rest in peace. The landlord went on. But she knows your identity, adding. And she has been requesting that we give her your room number without mentioning your fiancé. As in, really? No reputable business would simply divulge the information of its tenants in that manner. You would still be in violation of the law even if we did. What is she doing? I inquired. She parked in front of the fire zone with her kids in the car and is shouting police brutality because our courtesy officer gave her a fine and told her that if she doesn't move, we're going to have her car towed, stated my landlady. My apartment complex is very close to the university, and the main road leading to the separate properties is a frequently used route directly to many of the university buildings, as well as a third of the fraternities. They take this very, very, very seriously, and if there were a fire in that area, that section would most definitely be blocked off. Please note that the fine for parking in front of a fire zone here ranges from $500 to $2,000 depending on the location and severity of the situation. Did she relocate? I inquired. No, my landlord retorted. She threatened the courtesy officer after receiving a fine for the fire zone. Her children are still in the car, and he had to phone for assistance. My fiancé, seated next to me, burst out laughing like a crazy person as I cackled, clearly still in a panic because I still didn't know who this was. Yo, it's Raccoon Dog. My fiancé texted my mother. 55 what? What dog? My landlady interrupted. This poor woman sounded so defeated and worn out as she questioned, can you formally state that you didn't invite her and don't want her here? I told her everything from the beginning, and I could hear all the energy leave her body as she started laughing. This stunning woman said, okay, I got this expletive, in response to my confirmation. You guys have an incredibly nice Thanksgiving. We hung up. I couldn't stop thinking about this woman's children and how ashamed they must have been. I don't understand how I haven't heard from someone who has fled at this point. I was silently shocked, incredulous, and trying not to laugh. My fiancé clicked play on our movie and said, eat, watch. I honestly didn't know what to say, so I just followed his instructions, trying not to choke on my food from laughter. I tried to think of anything to say, but all I did was open my mouth before he stopped me with, nope, 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 nope. When I later learned that RD, Raccoon Dog, had gotten in touch with her, my mother threw the biggest fit, accusing me of lying to her about spending Thanksgiving with her children. It seems that during the same phone call where I yelled at her, she was fined $2,000 by the courtesy officer assigned by my landlord, and to make matters worse, her husband had to pay $3,500 to bail her out of jail, and she was hit with an additional $7,500 fine for trespassing, resisting arrest, and threatening violence toward a police officer. Yes, I didn't even have to do anything, yet I am the expletive worst. It all began with a random unsolicited phone call in the middle of the night a couple of months ago, and I'm still struggling to put the situation into words, and I'm trying to persuade myself that it really happened. The pièce de résistance. 2 days ago, her children created a group chat on one of my social media accounts with the three of us, apologizing for their crazy mother and all the crap she said about me spending time with them. Did you think that was the best part? Number. They said that what happened on Thanksgiving was the last straw for them, even though they had been wanting to apologize on her behalf for some time but were so ashamed that they decided to just leave me alone. These kids spent most of their Thanksgiving sitting in a car in front of a random apartment complex, and then they sat in a police station for an indeterminate amount of time until their dad could come get them. They knew their mom would be in jail overnight, and that bailing her out would blow half their Christmas fund. Which, yeah, imagine spending Thanksgiving stuck in a spectacle of pure insanity, brought on by your delusional mother. There's a really great pizza place up the street, was all I could reply. I'm off next Friday, and it's on me. I'm not sure what your schedules look like. This weekend, I have a pizza date and a restraining order, a match made in heaven. This whole thing has been such a cluster expletive dumpster explosion, and I hope you all liked sitting in it with me as much as I enjoyed writing it. My family hijacked my vacation plans for my golden sister and her kids. But this time, I had my own secret escape plan. Reddit, I need some perspective on this. I need advice with my family predicament, which has been accumulating for decades, but it's a long one. Despite growing up in a seemingly typical suburban Massachusetts family, I, 35 degrees Fahrenheit, have always struggled with this particular dynamic. The golden child has always been my older sister, Kate, 42F. Our home has been a monument to Kate's life since I can remember, with every wall adorned with her accomplishments and every discussion focused on her life. My parents were too busy getting ready for Kate's college interviews to buy a cake for my 10th birthday, which I can still clearly recall. They even attempted to pass off Kate's leftover graduation cake, which still had her name on it, as my birthday cake. As I grew up, Kate's accomplishments eclipsed every significant event in my life. Kate had recently been selected to the debate team, so my parents were hardly aware that I had made the honor roll in middle school. Kate had to tour a college campus, so they were unable to attend the ceremony when I won a local painting competition in high school. Knowing that expressing my accomplishments would only elicit a brief, "That's nice, dear," before the topic of Kate was brought up again, I learned to celebrate them in private, in my room. Even our possessions revealed the priorities of our family. The newest technology, stylish clothing, and everything Kate needed for her many extracurricular activities were always in her room, In contrast, my room was filled with hand-me-downs. When I expressed interest in taking music lessons, I had to make do with Kate's abandoned violin, her old clothes, and her old school supplies. I had trouble playing the violin since it was too large for me. We already spent so much on Kate's piano lessons this year, my mother responded in response to my request for a suitably sized one. All the way through high school, the trend persisted. I was forced to use borrowed library books to study while Kate received private instruction for her SATs. My parents took out a loan for her to buy a car for college. They advised me to take the bus when I needed assistance getting about. Kate's needs and desires were at the center of every financial choice, family discussion, and holiday preparation. It was really difficult in college. With the full backing of our parents, Kate had earned her degree from a renowned university. They could only agree to pay half of the tuition at a public school when it was my turn. They clarified, "We're still paying off Kate's student loans. You'll need to figure out the rest on your own." In order to make ends meet, I worked 2 part-time jobs while I was a student, frequently dozing off over my textbooks. Kate, in the meantime, was beginning her career at a position our parents had helped her land through their contacts. 7 years ago, Kate got married, and everything changed, or rather, grew worse. For a whole year, our family's whole attention was on the wedding. For her ideal wedding, which included a designer gown, an opulent location, and a guest list of more than 300, my parents took out another loan. Despite their concerns about the payments, I recall hearing them in the kitchen one evening and their insistence that nothing was too good for Kate's special day. Was there ever any question that she was her maid of honor? I was supposed to coordinate bridal showers, plan a lavish bachelorette party, and manage any minor emergencies that arose. My mother told me, "Don't be selfish, Elizabeth. This is your sister's special time," when I expressed how stressed I was with juggling these obligations while working a full-time job. The twins followed. Our parents were ecstatic when Kate revealed she was expecting twins. Even though they were still repaying the wedding loan, they contributed to the down payment on a home close to them. I witnessed them spend their retirement money, which they claimed they couldn't access when I needed assistance with college, on the day they signed those documents. However, they claimed that this was different. "This is for our grandchildren." Who was the default babysitter, you ask? Yes, I do. It started out as sporadic babysitting. The request, "Elizabeth, could you watch the boys for a few hours?" became a weekly ritual, which was later extended to evenings whenever they had appointments. My parents were in favor of this arrangement, stating, "This is what family does." Kate and her husband Jack, 43 million, assumed that I would always be there to assist them whenever I attempted to object. Even while I adore them, the twins, who are now active 7-year-olds, are draining. The routine is the same every weekend. Kate unexpectedly drops them off at my place, usually with a pretext that she needs me time, or has essential errands to run. The lads run amok, transforming my tiny apartment into a catastrophe. Kate starts crying about how overwhelmed she is when I try to set limits or ask for advance warning, and my parents criticize me for not being supportive. I put in a lot of overtime to establish myself in the marketing industry. I recently received a promotion offer that would involve greater hours and more travel. My mother remarked, "But what about the twins? Your sister needs you here." Kate added, "You can't take that job, Elizabeth. Who will help me with the boys?" When I brought up this topic during a family dinner in the hopes of receiving some congratulations. It seems as though my time, profession, and life are completely irrelevant. My father adds, "Family should come first, Elizabeth." My mother always responds, "Your sister has 2 children to look after. You don't know what tired really means." When I tried to explain how overwhelming it all is, Kate accused me of being envious of her life and her kids. She replied, "You're just bitter because you're still single," as though my marital status were the only factor that determines my value as a person. After a particularly demanding weekend with the twins, I made the decision to finally treat myself to a beach vacation last month. They had successfully damaged my laptop and left permanent markings on my couch. I knew I needed a vacation. I discovered a small, unpretentious resort in Florida that was ideal for a tranquil retreat. My mother's eyes glowed when I brought it up during our weekly family supper. "Oh, that's perfect. We should all go together. The twins would love the beach." Before I could protest, Kate had already begun organizing events. She stated, "You can take the boys swimming while Jack and I have some alone time," as though my trip would naturally turn into a time for them to be looked after. In exchange for my assistance with the twins, of course, my parents even offered to upgrade my reservation to a superior resort where they would all stay. Totally disregarding the fact that this was meant to be my vacation, they began organizing activities and outings centered around what the twins would like. I made a choice that would alter everything while I was lying in bed that night. I reserved a separate resort on a quiet little island. I kept the change in plans a secret from everyone. Silently, I began preparing by scheduling time off work, packing my things covertly, and ensuring that my emergency fund was available. Even though I know it's dishonest, I simply couldn't stand it any longer. At the airport, they will be separated from us. While I board my flight to another location, they will be traveling to Florida. I've disabled location sharing and am ready for the inevitable criticism. Yes, I am aware that there will be drama. Yes, I am aware that they will be upset. But I want to prioritize myself for the first time in my life. I've been the dependable sister, the ideal daughter, and the always available aunt for 35 years. To meet my family's expectations, I've given up my social life, my weekends, and my own needs. I was constantly babysitting, so I missed out on dating prospects. I have declined advancements that might conflict with the needs of my family. To be there for them whenever they need me, I've put my personal life on hold. Right now, I'm fleeing a lifetime of being taken advantage of, not just a holiday. I intend to utilize this as a turning point to set clear limits with my family and perhaps even take a complete vacation from them. I'm sick of always making sacrifices, being the family's pillar of support, and being the dependable fallback option. Reddit, what should I do? Am I exaggerating? Is it appropriate for me to want something else for myself, or should I merely follow their plans and accept my place in the family? First update, I appreciate all of your help and guidance. Since my last post, a lot has transpired, and I want to explain how it all turned out. Although everything went according to plan, the day at the airport was more emotionally fraught than I had anticipated. I purposefully chose a different check-in station that was far from where my family would be when I arrived early. I watched everyone come through the glass walls of the terminal, Jack checking their booking details, my parents looking excited, Kate handling the twins, and Kate hauling baggage. I silently went through security for my own flight as soon as they started to head to their check-in counter. As soon as they realized I wasn't at their gate, my phone began to buzz. The bewildered text first appeared. Where are you? Gate B12 is where we are. Then the anxious ones. How are you, Elizabeth? Has something taken place? And lastly, the irate ones. How could you treat us like this? The guys are in tears. Before I boarded my aircraft, I switched off my phone. I experienced a peculiar fusion of liberation and remorse for the first time in years. I had lived with that guilt for the majority of my life. However, freedom? It was exhilarating, and it was new. The crowded tourist destination they were going to was nothing like the little island where my resort was located. Years of strain vanished the instant I set foot on the beach. No twins to babysit, no family problems to handle, no schedule to adhere to. The ocean, me, and complete freedom. In fact, the first 2 days were challenging. The twins would be eating lunch now, or Kate would typically require assistance going to bed at this hour, so I kept checking the time. It's difficult to break decades of indoctrination. However, something changed on the third day. I experimented with things I had always wanted to do but had never had time for. I loved every minute of my silly yet fun surfing lesson. I became friends with a bunch of lone travelers when I enrolled in a yoga class by the beach. I even had a spontaneous dinner date with a fascinating man I met at the resort's coffee shop one evening. Even though it was only a casual supper, it served as a reminder that I could live a life apart from my family. When I eventually turned my phone back on after 5 days, that was the true test. There were dozens of voicemails, more than 300 text messages, and 147 missed calls. Even my mother had called my place of employment to report a family emergency. Fortunately, I had previously told my supervisor that I would be taking a holiday. Some of the voicemails were played for me. My mother's tone changed from one of concern to one of rage to one of manipulation. Elizabeth, how could you leave your family in such a way? The twins are inconsolable. Did we raise you this way? Even worse were Kate's messages. You've ruined everything. The lads are persistent in their request for Aunt Lizzie. I can't handle meetings by myself, so Jack had to shorten them. However, one message struck a different chord. My father sent it, and he seemed unsure for once. Elizabeth, please let us know you're safe even though I don't understand what's happening. I had never heard him talk to me without instantly defending Kate or pressuring me to do more before. I texted our family group chat just once. I'm having a great vacation and am safe. When I get back, I'll get in touch with you. Please give me space. I then turned off the conversation and resumed talking to myself. The following 5 days were life-changing. In addition to reading bedtime stories to the twins, I also read 3 novels. I spoke with other guests without interruption. Every evening, instead of rushing home to assist with baths and sleep, I watched the sunset. In order to digest years' worth of suppressed emotions, I even began journaling. I ate dinner at a little beachside eatery last night. When the elder waitress saw that I was alone, she inquired as to whether I was content with my seclusion. She said something that stuck with me after I gave her a brief explanation of my circumstances. Family is vital, honey, but not at the expense of your own well-being. Putting yourself first is sometimes the boldest thing you can do. I didn't head straight to my flat when I got home. In order to give myself time to get ready for the inevitable confrontation, I had reserved a hotel room for 2 nights. During this period, I updated my work emergency contacts, changed the locks on my doors, and, above all, put my boundaries in writing. I accidentally liked a coworker's post on social media, which is how my family found out I was back. My mother and Kate arrived at my apartment building in a matter of hours, constantly buzzing my intercom. Across the street, I watched them from the window of my hotel room, feeling oddly cut off from their spectacular performance. I'm going to confront them tomorrow, at a neutral coffee shop, not my residence. I know it won't be simple, but I've prepared what I want to say. When I consider it, my hands tremble. But I'm choosing myself for the first time in my life. And I know I'm doing the right thing in spite of the worry, the guilt, and the drama that will undoubtedly ensue. I'll provide another update following my talk with my family. I'm grateful because Reddit gave me the confidence to take this first step toward independence. Second update. As scheduled, my family and I gathered at the coffee shop, and it was even more heated than I had anticipated. This is what took place. The encounter at the coffee shop began politely enough. I got there early and sat at a corner table, where I could see the front door and the emergency exit, a habit I'd formed from years of expecting family drama. I could hardly grasp my coffee cup because my hands were shaking so much. My parents, Kate, and, surprisingly, Jack all showed up together. I am glad there are no twins. I raised my hand and said what I had practiced before they began their planned speeches. I'm establishing boundaries, and they can't be negotiated. The 2 hours that followed were a masterclass in manipulating emotions. Kate started crying as she described how my absence had traumatized the twins. My mom attempted to instill guilt, following all that we have done for you. Unexpectedly, Jack tried to mediate by offering a compromise in which I would only see the kids every other weekend. For the most part, my dad sat quietly and uneasy. Kate's statement, "You're being selfish. Family means sacrifice," was the pivotal moment. Something broke inside of me. Clearly but calmly, I responded, "Yes, family means sacrifice, but it's supposed to go both ways. When was the last time any of you sacrificed anything for me?" The ensuing hush was deafening. I revealed everything for the first time: the years of being Kate's second best friend, the unfair financial treatment, and the ongoing belief that my life and time were not as valuable as theirs. I then showed them my calendar for the previous year, with every weekend designated for babysitting and every holiday tailored to their requirements. Attempting to interrupt, my mother said, "But that's what aunts do." I responded by saying something I had never before dared to say. "No, that's what paid babysitters do. And Kate, if you need this much help, maybe it's time to consider hiring one." From there, the discussion took a different turn. My mother followed Kate as she rushed out. Remarkably sorry, Jack remained and acknowledged that they had exploited my availability. After remaining silent for a while, my father said, "We never meant to make you feel this way. It was something, but it wasn't an apology." I carried out my strategy when they departed. I relocated to a different area of the city and got a new apartment. Although it's smaller than my previous residence, it's in a safe building with a doorman who has been informed of my predicament. Only my workplace and a select group of close pals now have my updated phone number. Rebuilding my life from scratch was the most difficult aspect, not the relocation or the planning. I had no true hobbies and few close acquaintances because I had spent years being there for my family. I began modestly. I enrolled in pottery lessons, joined a local reading club, and accepted dinner invitations from coworkers that I had previously consistently declined. It was a weird first weekend of real freedom. I did things that were previously unthinkable, including staying up late, going to a farmer's market, and spending hours perusing a bookshop. Kate didn't text me urgently. Mom doesn't make guilt-tripping calls. No requests for last-minute babysitting. My family's response to my relocation was harsh but expected. When my mother attempted to contact me via the company switchboard, they learned that my new job does not allow personal calls during business hours. On one occasion, Kate even visited my office, but security was alerted beforehand. She wrote a tearful letter accusing me of destroying our family. Jack was the source of the unexpected development. He apologized by email for his part in making the scenario possible. At first, Kate objected to him taking the twins to events on the weekends, but she has since come to terms with it. It's a minor yet important modification. My folks are having a hard time adjusting. Dad occasionally texts, usually in an embarrassing attempt to strike up a conversation. Mom fluctuates between angry outbursts and icy quiet. She left a voicemail last week stating, "When you're done with this rebellion, we'll welcome you back." This isn't a phase, and she doesn't get it. My new reality is this. Without regular family interruptions, work has significantly improved. I'm more productive and focused. After noticing the shift, my supervisor assigned me to oversee a significant new project. For the first time in years, I'm also dating casually, but I'm taking it slow. Internally, there has been the biggest shift. I no longer have the ongoing background anxiety that I had for years. I've started exercising frequently, improved my diet, and slept better. According to my therapist, yes, I have finally begun therapy. I am beginning to recuperate from what she refers to as chronic family stress syndrome. The twins sent me a gift last weekend that included handcrafted notes expressing how much they miss me. Even though it was bittersweet, I remained resolute. I carefully wrote them back to let them know that, although I love them, I need some time to look after myself. I had to write it even though Kate is unlikely to read it to them. "There's a lightness about you now. You look years younger," observed an old acquaintance of mine when I ran into her yesterday. She is correct. I feel lighter in spite of the angry texts, the efforts at emotional manipulation, and the guilt that still surfaced. More liberated. Family love shouldn't feel like a prison sentence, I'm discovering. Respect for personal space, acknowledgement of one's own needs, and reciprocal assistance, rather than only one-sided sacrifice, are all components of true love. My new flat will be 1 month old next week. This is the first time I've ever dared to throw a tiny housewarming celebration. Only a few buddies from pottery class, book club, and work. No expectations, no drama, no family, just individuals who embrace me for who I am. I'll provide another update soon. I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the confidence to make a life shift. Update 3. Completed update. It has been a life-changing 3 months, and I want to describe how it has all come together. The confrontation I had been dreading and anticipating arrived last week. My father unexpectedly came up to my place of employment. His method was distinct from Kate's emotional manipulations or my mother's prior frenzied attempts. When he asked if we could have lunch together, he was composed, even resigned. We got together at a peaceful eatery close to my workplace. For the first time in my life, he truly saw me as his daughter, not as Kate's sister or the family's fallback option. He remarked, "You look healthy," in a startled tone. Happier. The fact that he hadn't seen my discontent for years weighed heavily on the observation that lingered between us. The family had presented him with a proposal. They were prepared to make concessions. If I agreed to take back my place in the family, I could have every other weekend off. He went on to say, they'd even pay for my time with the twins, as though making money off of the commitment would make it more alluring. They still didn't understand, I realized as I looked at him across the table. They did not view my independence as a basic right, but rather as a negotiating chip. "Dad," I replied, "I'm not negotiating my freedom. I'm living it." The conversation that ensued was the most candid one I have ever had with my father. I described how their incessant focus on Kate had impacted me emotionally as much as practically. I told him about memories he had forgotten or had never noticed, dreams disregarded, accomplishments overlooked, and birthdays neglected. His reaction was surprising. He sat for a long time in quiet, not making the normal defense of their decisions. At last, he stated, "We thought we were doing what was best for the family. We never saw how much we were hurting you." Although that wasn't quite an apology, it was the first time I had ever been acknowledged. When he inquired about my new life, that was the true turning point. He paid attention for the first time as I discussed my pottery lessons, my job advancement, and the new acquaintances I had made. Even though it was not flawless, I showed him pictures of a vase I had built. I was shocked by what he said next. "You seem to have built a good life for yourself without us." Both the recognition and the grief in his voice were genuine. We agreed at the end of lunch that nothing would ever be the same again. He gave me my first sincere embrace in years as he bid farewell. "I hope someday we can be part of your life again, but on different terms." That exchange appeared to set off a final round of family strife. After learning of our lunch, my mother began a fresh round of emotional attacks. She has been informing family members that I need an intervention because I'm having a breakdown. Kate has been making passive-aggressive remarks about selfish sisters and broken families on social media because she feels deceived by our father's approval of my decisions. The difference is that none of it has the same impact on me as it formerly did. I've gained a viewpoint from my new life that I didn't have previously. Their actions, in my opinion, are an attempt to keep control over someone who has finally gained their freedom. My new flat seems like home now. My attempts at pottery and pictures of my chosen family, friends who value my independence and respect boundaries, adorn the walls. I've begun teaching my less experienced coworkers at work, ending the vicious loop of toxic support that has long ensnared me. My connection with time has changed the most. I get to spend the weekends any way I want. I've started learning Spanish, joined a local hiking group, and even started dating someone who respects and values my limits. I'm creating a life for the first time that is true to who I am rather than what my family demands of me. The twins sent me a homemade card last Sunday, which was obviously written under supervision. It was filled with regrettable statements about how much they miss their aunt. This would have previously led me into a downward spiral of uncertainty and remorse. Rather, I responded with a tender yet strong letter, stating that although I may not be as involved in their everyday life, my love for them hasn't changed, and that sometimes grown-ups need to look for themselves. According to my therapist, I am exhibiting what she refers to as post-traumatic growth. Not merely moving past the past but creating something more robust and wholesome in its stead. She has assisted me in realizing that I am not responsible for resolving the dysfunction in my family. Yesterday was the most recent development. Jack, Kate's husband, contacted me to let me know that my stance has caused changes in their home, not to place blame on me. They've finally recruited part-time help to help with the twins, and he's become a more involved parent. Jack believes it's better for everyone, but Kate is having trouble adjusting. I'm sitting in my home office getting ready for a business trip next week as I write this last update, something I could never have done in my previous life. A frame quotation that speaks to my path is on the wall behind my desk. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set yourself free. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to make my own decisions. If you're wondering if people in comparable circumstances are selfish for desiring their own lives, know that you're not. Being free is not selfish. Treating oneself is not unkind. Setting limits is not a sign of treachery. I have no idea how my relationship with my family may develop in the future. Perhaps one day we'll discover a different kind of connection, one based on respect for one another rather than duty. In the interim, I'm concentrating on fostering the life I've built, including my friendships, interests, profession, and, above all, my sense of self. This is not merely a conclusion, it's just the beginning. And I'm looking forward to what comes next for the first time in my life.